started, Leila, and to you, and to this extraordinary decision you have taken to, if I can put it this way, personalize your absolute demand that Allah's rights be respected.
Yes.
So I want to end with this. It's something I saw that you said some time ago, and it struck me as remarkable, and I want you both to react to it now. You said, of your own children, you said, and this is back in 2011, I don't want them, my kids, to start thinking that I'm part of this older Egyptian generation that my younger daughter, that is you, speaks so disparagingly of. I want them going forward to be proud of me. You said it around the Tahrir Revolution. I want you to reflect on it now. Do you think you've made your kids proud?
That's a question put to them, not to me.
Leila Suwaif and Sana Saif, I thank you both very, very much for joining me on Hard Talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was Hard Talk. I'm Saroja Coelho. You're listening to CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Well, what about that hockey game, Canada, huh? I'm Marcy Marcusa. Good morning. Thanks for joining us here on Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. We're live in downtown Winnipeg. We had some guys on the ice last night to cheer for from Winnipeg. And we're going to hear more about what happened in the game in a moment. It's on my mind because I stayed up late. Maybe you did too. 3 minutes now to 6 a.m. The show is on air till 8:37. And thank you for joining us on the morning show here on CBC. The other thing that's nice today is that the weather has finally taken that shift we've been waiting for. It's minus 15 degrees in the city, and we could see temperature highs above zero by the end of this weekend. So welcome to Friday morning. Let's say good morning to the team. Corey Funk is in. Corey directs the show and covers the commute. Good morning to Abby Adeyemi, who's behind the controls. Abby is our technical producer and covers weather on air. And good morning to Mr. Kevin Nipatebo, who's saying hello to you on YouTube. Kevin is our YouTube producer. All right, let's go to Heather Wells for stories that are developing this morning. How are you doing in there?
I'm so happy.
Right?
Something to cheer about,
You
right?
starting with hockey, I'm guessing?
A championship that goes to Canada is the NHL's midseason tournament. The Four Nations face-off. Team Canada defeating the USA 3-2 in overtime. That winning goal from Connor McDavid. An emotionally charged game. We're going to hear more about it coming up on World Report, and we'll also have more in our local news coming up at 6:30. As well, it was supposed to be a dream wedding. It was anything but. Canadians who recently traveled to Mexico are calling on authorities there to investigate after dozens of guests got sick at an all-inclusive beachside resort. We'll hear from some Winnipeggers in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, speaking of the game, I thought Winnipeg also looked kind of stylish and funky, and that is because of the friends of one of the players that were interviewed. Guys from Winnipeg that drove all the way there to Boston to check out the game yesterday, and they ended up on talking to the nation. Everybody heard from them. They were in this interview that was during the broadcast. So we're going to try to reach those guys this morning. We're also going to talk more about the anthem and how Chantal Kreviasek changed the lyrics. If you want to weigh in on what you thought of that, you can always give us a call. And then we have a couple of wedding stories. We will build on the one that Heather just mentioned, which is unfortunate. And then we'll have a bit of a celebration because the Wonderful Wedding Show is turning 35 and it kicks off this weekend. Right now, though, let's turn to national and international news. The latest on World Report coming up at 6.
Today on Q.
I'm Talia Schlanger sitting in for Tom Power. Canadian singer-songwriter Tate McRae is having a huge moment. She's got a brand new album and a bunch of Juno nominations. She'll tell you about this whirlwind rise to fame, and with all of that, how she's learning to stay present.
Q. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Martina Fitzgerald. Cheers ringing out from coast to coast to coast. From there, the hometown of Team Canada captain Sidney Crosby, Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia, to Vancouver, BC. All celebrating Canada's 3-2 victory over the United States last night in the championship game of the Four Nations Cup. It came at an unprecedented low point in the relationship between our two countries. The CBC's Jamie Strachan has more from Boston.
In the end, the finals of the Four Nations Cup delivered, and who else to end it but Connor McDavid. The Edmonton Oilers superstar ripped a shot into the top corner just over 8 minutes into overtime, the Canadian bench erupting in jubilation. The championship game was played at a feverish pace, the first time the league's best players have faced each other in more than a decade, adding fuel the political tension that loomed over the final, driven by U.S. President Donald Trump, who continued his jibes about Canada becoming the 51st state in the hours leading up to puck drop. The tension carried into the heavily partisan American crowd, who showered the Canadian anthem with boos. U.S. fans sang the Star-Spangled Banner in unison at a deafening level. But Canada had the last laugh, quieting the American crowd and capturing the title at a tournament that far exceeded expectations. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Boston.
That booing that Jamie mentioned only tells part of the story regarding national anthems. There was an alteration to O Canada by Chantal Kraviazek.
True patriot love that only us command with glowing hearts.
Did you hear that? Kraviazek made a slight adjustment to the lyrics, singing that only us command. Despite continued jabs by U.S. President Donald Trump before the match, Prime Minister Trudeau has the last word, at least so far, posting to social media, "You can't take our country, and you can't take our game." The premiers of Nova Scotia and Ontario are in the U.S. Capitol this morning. They're meeting with governors from several states attending a conference in Washington. The CBC's Cameron McIntosh is on this story for us today and joins us from Washington with more. So, Cam, what are the premiers trying to do?
Well, quite simply, it's just about being seen and heard. Ontario Premier Doug Ford, Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston are both here. Now, relations with Canada aren't formally on the agenda for the governors, but the premiers are just trying to take advantage of an opportunity with nearly all the governors and hundreds of state officials all in one place. They're trying to talk to whoever they can, Republican, Democrat, just building the case for partnership with Canada in the face of President Trump's tariff threats. Here now is Premier Tim Houston.
No tariffs. I mean, ultimately, that's what we're trying to get to. But it's a process. We understand that. So we just continue to talk about how the impact it can be. Put the price up for Americans, have an impact on Canadians, have an impact on Nova Scotians. So the success is just getting people to listen and engage in dialogue.
Now, I should mention he's been walking around in a red Team Canada jersey, so that certainly will be a conversation starter in D.C. today. This also builds on similar lobbying last week when all 13 premiers are here. They got a meeting with some Trump officials, both sides saying the dialogue was positive, but certainly no promises made.
So no promises, but what are the governors saying about all this?
Well, plenty of them really do share Canada's concerns. Not only does Canada do billions of dollars in trade with the U.S. each day, Canada is the top export market for 36 states. So they're concerned about retaliation, though the Republican governors are towing the Trump line. Now, while Houston and Ford say conversations are positive, they also say it's just not front of mind like it is in Canada. Other issues like border security, fentanyl are big on the agenda here, and President Trump is speaking to the governors later today. The big challenge for these two premiers is just getting on the radar as that March 4th tariff deadline looms.
And that is the CBC's Cam McIntosh in Washington. Thanks so much, Cam.
My pleasure.
Prime Minister Trudeau is reaffirming support for Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. It comes amid increasing political tensions between Ukraine and the United States. Trudeau says Canada will always stand in defense of Ukraine. He says Europe cannot have sustainable peace without security for Ukraine. Trudeau is repeating his call for Ukraine to be at the negotiating table as U.S. officials meet with their Russian counterparts to discuss a possible deal.
האכזריות של מפלצות החמאס אינה יודעת שום גבול.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is promising retribution. He says Hamas will pay for failing to release the body of a hostage, Shiri Bibas, as promised. He calls it a violation of their ceasefire agreement. All of this as 6 more hostages living are scheduled to be released tomorrow. Sasha Petrusek has the latest from Jerusalem.
Grief Grief has swept Israel at memorials and teary gatherings like one that fills Tel Aviv's Hostage Square. First, mourning for two young boys, 4-year-old Ariel and his infant brother Kafir Bibas, handed over in coffins by Hamas yesterday. Now, fury that another casket, said to contain their mother Shiri, isn't her at all.
And the mother, they just sent a body, and it's so painful.
Forensic experts say remains of the two boys and of another 84-year-old man released by Hamas matched DNA on file. With her,
the forensic identification didn't match.
Israeli military spokesman Nadav Shoshani.
We've checked time and time again, and we came to the result that it's not Shiri, that is not any of our hostages. And it is apparent it is just an anonymous person from Gaza.
The military also says the two boys were murdered a month after the kidnappings, not killed in airstrikes like Hamas says. Hamas will pay the price, says Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, for this cruel and evil violation of the ceasefire agreement. Hamas now says bodies were mixed up after an airstrike on the location where hers was being held, in the rubble of Gaza. It's still sinking in on the streets of Israel. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Jerusalem.
A British Columbia man is putting tariff tensions aside and reaching across the border. He's inviting thousands of Americans to visit his hometown, Nanaimo. The invitation, shared on TikTok, has taken off among Americans as a way to protest President Trump's treatment of Canada. Georgie Smythe has more.
Hey, Americans who support Canadians, I have an idea. What if we picked a day in like a month and a half or so where all of you come up here to Vancouver Island?
Todd Maffin is throwing down the welcome mat for thousands of Americans.
Should we do this?
To support Canada by signing up to visit his town, Nanaimo, in the spring. The invite and the video went viral down south, provoking shares like this.
He says, hey, $1 worth of $1.46 up here, right?
Maffin, who's a business journalist, says the idea was kind of an accident, but could have a huge positive impact on the seaside town.
And we're past 2,000 people now. If 10% of those 2,000 show up, 200 people, is still going to be, I think, a pretty decent boost to the Mid-Island's economy.
The local tourism board has already got hotel bookings from people as far as Texas and Florida. Maffin included videos and maps explaining how to get to Nanaimo.
You're going to be coming mostly through the Peace Arch border crossing, and you're going to be driving north into Canada.
Nanaimo Mayor Leonard Krogh says after some initial confusion, the town is ready to host.
The prospect of taking money from American tourists during this particularly challenging time in our relationship with the United States is very appealing to me.
Canadians and Americans trading travel tips again instead of tariffs for now. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Vancouver.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report, along with a hockey story that we are going to dine out on for as long as possible. This month, we are asking you to follow World Report wherever you get your podcasts. It helps us reach new listeners, and it helps you stay on top of the day's biggest stories. I'm Martina Fitzgerald.
Well, Manitobans were writing in right after the game on Facebook. Comments simply like awesome and congratulations, Canada. We're asking you this morning, what did last night's win mean to you? You can always weigh in on my Marcy Marcusa page. That's my name. The show's Information Radio. You're on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube Live. Well, this hour on the program, a new era for Canadian pro women's soccer. The Northern Super League is set to start early spring. We're going to check in on the development of that. Also this hour on the program, you might recall in December, Manitoba confirmed its first case of avian influenza in domestic birds at a commercial poultry operation over in Portage la Prairie. So now fast forward a month and a half, and as you've been hearing, the Public Health Agency of Canada has purchased 500,000 doses of a vaccine to try and protect humans against avian flu. We will walk you through what you need to know about it. That's coming up just before 7 o'clock. But right now, I think Marcia just said, World Report, they were just saying we need to bask in this win a little longer. So let's do that. Let's go to Heather Wells in our news center with headlines. Hello there.
Good morning. Yes, and what a win it was. All the way to overtime. And that winning goal by Connor McDavid. Of course, he beat the Winnipeg Jets goalie, Connor Hellebuck, in net for the USA. So we'll hear more reaction to that big win last night in Boston as Canada wins the very first Four Nations face-off against the United States. And the Women's Health Clinic has suspended in-person appointments at its Graham Avenue clinic because of flooding. It's just the latest incident to plague that 60-year-old community clinic. And while a CBC camera was there yesterday, part of the ceiling actually collapsed. So we're going to hear from the health minister about what's been going on at the Women's Health Clinic on Graham Avenue. Those stories and more coming up at 6:30.
You know, Heather, just back to the game, you were talking about Hellebuck. What's that going to feel like for him? You know, walking like he played amazing, but it was so conflicting for a lot of Winnipeggers watching him in net for the States, right? I wonder what it's going to feel like when they're all back with their teams.
You know what? I think it's going to just revert to the way it was. I will admit, I was a little bit torn too because I was not cheering for Hellebuck. I was hoping that he'd let one pass. But yeah, I think when he comes back and suits up in a Jets jersey, it'll kind of revert to the way it was.
For sure, for sure. Here's hoping, right? Here's hoping there's no kind of, I don't know, kind of...
residual animosity.
Yeah. Good phrase. Thank you for putting the correct words to it. Speaking of goaltenders, though, my goodness, Binnington stood on his head in overtime. Like, we always talk about the goal scorer that won it, but honestly, wow. The Americans were coming hard and fast. It was crazy.
He really rose to the occasion there.
Oh, he was amazing. All right. We get to smile this Friday. It's nice to do that. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
All right, let's get into things that affect your life here in Winnipeg. Even though we like to celebrate all morning, we need to celebrate something else, not just hockey. Abby, it happened, man.
One other thing to smile about is it's not extremely cold outside. It just feels chilly.
It's the first morning we haven't had a warning in weeks.
Yeah, in weeks for sure. Just a bit chilly across the province. We have clear skies out there. A bit of, frigid conditions in the northern part of the province this morning. They will be seeing some flurries in Churchill. But right now, Winnipeg, we are at minus 16, clear outside. Expect a sunny start today. Clouds will move in later this afternoon. We will be seeing a high of minus 9 today. The wind chill this morning, though, still in that range close to minus 30. But then as you get into the afternoon, you find out it gets to around minus 17. So it's going to be a wonderful day. There tonight, we're going to see partly cloudy skies and temperatures will warm up to minus 5. So if you're going to be doing those evening walks, I think you don't have to worry about extreme cold this evening.
Yeah, and nice for Festival to wrap up with a bit of warmth.
It's like Festival just held on to the cold.
Yep.
Like, okay, we're done. You can now warm up.
So now the snow sculptures can maybe settle in, melt a touch.
Melt until next year.
All right, let's get to what's happening on the morning commute. Corey, you usually are an active commuter. How'd you get here today?
Yeah, I ran, and it felt like the first morning in a while where I didn't have to brace to walk outside the door.
Yeah, you don't have the marks under your eyes this morning,
no,
like where you can see your scarf buff,
yeah,
and where the wind whips on your face.
I ran to work and didn't really think about how much it hurt. It was very nice. And so far it seems like a smooth commute overall. I haven't heard of any major issues. But if you do see something going on out there, if you're walking, biking, driving, give me a call. Let me know what you're seeing. That number 204-788-3093.
I love that it's minus 16 and we're all celebrating like it's, beach weather. But that's kind of what it feels like after the past few weeks. It has been so extremely cold. Those frosty temperatures over the past number of weeks have meant that many people's furnaces and the folks who repair them have been working overtime. Dallas Friesen's the owner of Lynn's Heating and Cooling. And up first this morning on this show, he says he and his team have been working around the clock to keep folks warm during this cold snap. Dallas spoke with CBC's Faith Fundal yesterday on Up to Speed.
When I say that it's been busy, what do you actually mean?
Well, the call volume has doubled in the last week, starting from almost the Friday.
So averaging, we're used to 40 to 50 calls, and now we're going almost 80 to 90 calls in a 24-hour period.
Have you had to say no to people because it's been so busy?
Well, it's a sad thing to say, to turn someone down when they're freezing, but we do prioritize our Lynn's family customers first, and obviously Winnipeg residents over someone that's outside the city. Yeah.
What's the typical wait time for service calls right now when someone calls you?
Generally within about a 2 to 3 hour window. We try to dispatch our team geographically, so if we have someone in Charleswood, we'll keep that tech there all day. Not sending them across the city and wasting more downtime.
Right, so you try to get as many customers in that area dealt with as rather than sort of doing all the travel things. I mean, the weather forecast, we've known for a while now that it was going to be cold for an extended period of time. Whenever you see those kinds of forecasts, does that change the way you plan your business in terms of getting techs ready and getting your call takers ready to get all these calls?
Yeah, most definitely. I kind of consider myself a meteorologist by hobby, just because I'm forecasting what to order and what to bring in and how to staff. So we definitely start our days a little earlier, and we bring in the staff needed to take those 5 a.m. phone calls. And we also prep a lot of heaters, space heaters, construction heaters as backup, just to keep the Winnipeg homes comfortable while we're searching for those parts to get in.
Dallas, for some people, a downed furnace isn't something they will necessarily think about, and it doesn't become a thing until it happens. What's the most surprising thing you say to folks who do call about how to make sure that that they prepare for the future? Because now their furnace is down, but in terms of dealing with it in the future, what do you tell them about how to manage that?
Well, the best way to look at it is to be proactive, not reactive. And the worst time for heat and water to go is, Saturday night or over a holiday and everything's closed up.
Right.
So I try to compare it like you're going on a long road trip in a car. And if you're going from Winnipeg to Calgary, you want to make sure that car has air in the tires, gas in the tank, and an oil change done.
Do you find a lot of people are proactive about this? Where they actually throughout the year they think, okay, it's the fall season, I better call my furnace tech to do like a tune-up or something like that. Are people proactive? Most people proactive?
Not so much. Unfortunately, there's probably 10% of the population that are really geared up and prepping the same time, same place. Every year we go to their residence.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are reacting and they don't budget for it, and it's quite the shock. Of course, after Christmas and credit card bills coming up to tax time, it's all stressful. So not the most prepped, but we do try to take some fear and uncertainty away on every service call we go into.
And it also can get pretty bad, especially if you're not proactive or getting ahead of some of the usual tune-ups that you would do, right? Because when your furnace goes down and it's not obviously it's not planned, there are some other knockoff effects, right? Like your heat goes off and pipes might freeze, like all of those sorts of things, right?
Well, we're in the midst of travel season, so a lot of the calls we're getting, people are in Mexico and getting either alerts on their phone or the people watching their house are saying, hey, we see your pipes burst. The neighbor calls the call in, and then we go there and the home's sitting at 2 degrees. And you don't know until you get there unless it's monitored daily if people are traveling too.
What do people do? How do you prepare your furnace before traveling?
Well, the easiest thing, and I would consider it common sense, but to change that furnace filter regularly, every 2 to 3 months, making sure fresh batteries are in your thermostats, making sure your vents outside as you do a perimeter walk around the home, all the vents are wide open, breathing freely, whether that's from the HRV, exhausts, or the furnace, white pipes. And so little things like that, tips and tricks to look up or phone us, and we just send a little pre-text message, check these things.
And I guess having a contact person as well, to who will be in Winnipeg or wherever folks are, so that if there's a problem, they can manage it, and not you while you're in Mexico or some other international locale.
Be so blessed to get there in that warm weather. This feels like spring today, but just setting that person up, whoever is watching your home, or even having a plan. Getting prices for estimates on new equipment ahead of time. No, don't be rushed on a Saturday night to make quick decisions. we always want to keep you comfortable and really think about what you're investing in. And it's not a small purchase, and you want to go with the right team, with the right equipment, with the best warranty.
Dallas, there will be folks who may be new homeowners. I'm included in that. What do you say to people like me on what they need to know to best take care of their HVAC system, whether it's just the furnace or if they have the mixture of heating and cooling?
Yeah, so do a walk around. Look up the model you have, look up the filter size, making sure that you maybe keep one extra filter stocked. Look at the product, and it's not anything to be ashamed of to ask for help from a mechanical contractor. We don't bill for free advice. We can help you over the phone with about 90% of your questions. So that's kind of my advice: is be prepared with a good plan.
And what about for people who have not yet thought about bringing you in? Are there things they should be listening to? Are there sounds or warning signs that a furnace might be in need of servicing sooner rather than later?
Definitely. So a lot of the phone calls we get, we have the customers say, I smell something burning. Something plasticky is coming up my vents. Or our fan is not quite going on, or it is going on, but it's screaming at us. So any louder noise you do hear, it's probably not normal. So that's an indicator right there with smell, sight, or hearing.
That's Dallas Friesen, the owner of Lynn's Heating and Cooling locally here, and he spoke with CBC's Faith Fundal yesterday on Up to Speed.
Here's to the bold. The Professional Women's Hockey League is back. Lace up, strap in, and tune in to Hockey Saturdays on CBC, where you can catch the best women's hockey players competing head-to-head with everything they've got. The puck drops Saturdays at 2 p.m. Eastern on CBC, CBC Gem, and cbcsports.ca. Don't miss it.
Well, from professional women's hockey to professional women's soccer, a new chapter in Canadian soccer kicks off this spring with 6 teams spread out from coast to coast. The Northern Super League is the new face of pro women's soccer in Canada. Former national soccer team player Diana Matheson founded the league, and she joins us this morning live. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
So what inspired you to create this Northern Super League?
You know what? We need it is kind of the short answer. Canada's had such success on the national team stage. Obviously, our women's national team, world class, won back-to-back Olympic medals, including gold in Tokyo. But the reality is that unless we started to build a league and we created more pathways from coast to coast for incredible girls playing soccer instead of the 2 or 3 markets they're in now, that the rest of the world was going to pass us because the rest of the world's been investing in these women's pro leagues for the past 5-10 years. In the last Women's World Cup, out of 32 teams, there was actually only 2 teams that didn't have a league, and it was us and it was Haiti. So it was time to get involved. Women's professional sport, you were just talking about the PWHL, is growing so quickly. Canada's a world-class place to play soccer, to grow soccer players, incredible soccer fans. So it was time to get started.
When you use the word, Diana, pathway, pathway to get to keep the sport growing and a pathway to pro. Tell me a little bit about that, the importance of sort of that continuum, because I think people that may not, lean into sports and development and really understand how you get good at something and how you inspire young players, those pathways are critical, and they come with, the need for funding as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's 2 parts of it. There's making sure there's the visibility and places to play for these top girls soccer players across the country. So the way the system's been working right now in women's soccer is there's pretty much 3 places that have a pathway that go all the way to the women's national team, and it's Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal. And it's really tough if you don't live in one of those 3 cities. There's a few kids that might move there and train in these training environments, but other than that, it's really, really tough. And what professional leagues do is they create pathways to professional and to the women's national team across the country. So having teams for us in the prairies, in Atlantic Canada, in regions of Canada that don't have these pathways is huge for us. And the other thing too is the professional sport industry doesn't just create pathways for the players. It's about creating more job opportunities for coaches, for referees, for women in sport business, women in sport media. It's really hard to there's just been no jobs before. So you can be all these things, but there's no opportunities. There's no end in mind. And with women's professional sport now here and only getting started in Canada, we're going to have so many more opportunities for women and fans in whatever role they want to be in.
How many teams are involved in the new league, and how do you see the season unfolding?
We've got 6 teams to start in this inaugural year, coast to coast: Vancouver Rise, Calgary Wild, AFC Toronto, Ottawa Rapid, Montreal Roses, and Halifax Tides. We kick off April 16th in Vancouver, BC Place, for the inaugural season of this league. It's 75 total games regular season. Each team plays each other 5 times, and then we have 4 teams make the playoff, followed by a championship game. So that's all kicking off April 16th, and I cannot wait for that first crowd at BC Place. I know it's going to be absolutely buzzing.
I got to ask about my hometown here, Winnipeg. How do we get involved? And obviously, you were talking about wanting to expand across the country. I know you're just getting started, but what's your sensibility of soccer strength on the prairies?
Oh, I mean, Desiree Scott, I think, will disown me as a friend if we don't get a team in Winnipeg one day. So
I wasn't going to say it. You say it.
Right? We got to get one for the Destroyer. So I think that's a fact. We're going to need another team in the prairies. Absolutely. Once we kick off in April, the league's going to start to look at what our expansion process looks like and the timeline to add 2 new teams. But absolutely, Winnipeg would be a target market for us.
How do you plan on building a strong fan base and engaging with local communities where you do have teams set up?
Yeah, I think on the one side, we know there's a good fan base already to work from. We already know there's data out there that shows 20 million Canadians are fans of women's sport already. We know there's incredible participation in soccer and fandom around soccer, and that's going to continue to grow. When it comes to connecting with communities, we're a little bit differently set up than PWHL, for example. There's single entity model, one single investor at the top. Our clubs are owned by investors and investor groups in those markets. So clubs are being built from the ground up with people from the communities, connecting with people that know what their city's about, knowing what their identity's about, and bringing, hopefully you'll see it, they bring their brands and their logos and their playing style and their jerseys and hopefully the fan atmosphere in the stadiums alive in a way that's unique to the place they live in Canada.
What was the biggest challenge you faced when you were establishing the league?
Yeah, you know what? There's not one single one. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to we were a startup. We went the entrepreneurial route. So anyone out there that's built a business, I know can relate fully to what that means. Long days, long nights, lots of uncertainty, lots of juggling of balls, and then trying to keep track of which balls are the ones that might be okay to drop and which ones you can't. And just working on something because you love it and you believe in it. And then for me, I kept saying we only have to build this thing once. And now we're 54 days from kickoff. So it's pretty incredible.
Enjoy it. Thank you very much for being on the show this morning live. Appreciate hearing about it. Can't wait to watch.
Thanks for having me.
That's Diana Matheson, founder and the Chief Growth Officer of the Northern Super League. So if you're listening and you're a soccer player in Manitoba, get ready. Nice to have news about another pro women's league here in this country. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us on the show this morning. You're listening to CBC's Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and YouTube. Minus 16, the weather has taken that beautiful turn that we were expecting and waiting for, so a lot warmer. And your morning commute, pretty good. 788-3093. I shouldn't overstate it. If you're waiting for the bus, you're still going to be bundling up, but it's a lot better than it has been, right? Well, coming up, we have business news. As always, Crystal Ramlakan is going to join us live on the show. Today, we're going to hear more about U.S. President Donald Trump, who is now proposing more tariffs, this time on softwood lumber. We're going to hear what effect that could have on the Canadian lumber industry, and of course, we have been here before. So stay tuned. That's after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it is minus 16 right now in downtown Winnipeg, and the warm-up is finally here. We're headed to a high today of minus 9, still slightly below normal, but we will be above freezing by Sunday. We begin this morning in Boston.
Sends it around. Marner waiting. Connor McDavid scores!
Connor McDavid scoring the game winner last night in overtime as Canada beat the United States to win the inaugural Four Nations Face-Off tournament. 3-2 the final score, a thrilling final. All things considered was more than just a hockey game. It was emotionally and politically charged, abundantly clear even before the puck was dropped. Here is Canadian singer Chantal Kreviazuk performing "O Canada" with the lyrics patriotically reworked.
True patriot love that only us command.
Kreviazuk's changing in All of Us command to Only Us command. And her management team confirms the lyric change was most definitely in response to the U.S. president's ongoing references to Canada becoming the 51st state. So we'll hear more about this story as it develops throughout the morning. But oh, Canada, we did win a big one last night, beating the USA. In other news, Canadians who recently traveled to Mexico want local authorities to investigate after dozens of guests got sick at an all-inclusive beachside resort. Winnipegger Joel Boyley is among those who recently stayed at Sandoz Playa Car in Playa del Carmen. Hired to photograph a wedding, he and his family saw it as a chance to take a vacation. Well, just 2 days in, they all got sick, including his 2- and 4-year-olds. He went to the resort with his concerns, and Boyley says they were dismissed.
You must have been sick before you got here. Nobody else is sick. It's just, you'll be fine. Our water's fine, our food's fine, everything's fine.
The resort blames the illnesses on an increase of stomach viruses in Canada and the U.S., including norovirus. Those impacted plan to file a complaint with Mexico's health authority. Well, the Women's Health Clinic has suspended in-person appointments at its Graham Avenue clinic because of flooding. And while a CBC camera was there yesterday, part of the ceiling collapsed.
Electronic now, so...
It's the latest incident to plague that 60-year-old community clinic. Over the weekend, the boiler quit, the pipes froze, and then leaked. Health Minister Uzoma Asaguera says their department provided heaters and generators. It's the second time the Graham Avenue building's issues have disrupted patient services in the last 7 months.
It's not acceptable. We've been meeting frequently with the Women's Health Clinic. We've been down at the location to meet with the team there, and we've been in regular conversations with them about not only the building, but the services and how we can work together to strengthen them.
Asaguera says it'll be up to the clinic to make sure the building is safe before resuming in-person appointments. An outreach organization in Winnipeg is calling for more safe spaces for youth after a string of violent incidents in the North End. In the last week in the area, 2 people died in a double homicide. Another person was shot in a separate incident. Brandy Bobier runs Community Helpers Unite.
Opening safe spaces for youth is imperative. Opening more programs for youth is imperative. I feel like a lot of the violent crime is happening at the hands of youth, a lot more than it used to. And I think a lot of that has to do with them feeling not supported.
Bobier's organization has been running new overnight space for youth in the neighborhood. She says spaces like that are important so youth don't turn to gangs where they could seek a sense of community support. Gambler First Nation near Russell is getting a new health clinic. In 2 weeks, Brazilian doctor Igor Chincaru will help to open that clinic. He came to Canada in 2019 and updated his studies to become licensed here. Now, finished exams, he will spend his first year in Gambler as a clinical assistant. Chincaru says he's already talking to community members about their health concerns.
It will be really helpful because some of the gamblers can't really drive. They can commute to a clinic on a daily basis, and I'll be available for them. I'll be there. That's the main thing. I'll be there for them.
For now, Chincaru will only be seeing Gambler First Nation patients in that community of 89 people. And an education leader is concerned about misinformation surrounding books in Manitoba schools. PC leadership candidate Wally Dowdrich says school libraries are carrying pornographic material. He made the allegation at this week's PC leadership debate in Brandon. After the debate, an audience member showed CBC a book depicting sexual activities. But Manitoba School Boards Association President Sandy Nemeth says there is no book like that in schools.
What people need to know is that if at any given time they believe that they know this to be true, and Mr. Doddridge included, they should be contacting their school division office and ask for some clarity and some conversation.
Doddridge couldn't say where the books he referenced can be found. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, Heather Wells, thank you.
Thank you.
So I've got some Facebook comments here. We're going to share some of them after 7 o'clock. You can weigh in right now, though. We're out asking about the hockey game last night. I saw a lot of people posting before the game started saying, I feel nervous, like unusually nervous. I kind of felt excited myself and then, a little bit nervous, just hoping we'd win, and so we did. But what did last night's win, Canada over U.S., at the Four Nations Cup mean to you? So you can weigh in on Facebook. You're going to see the thread there on my Marcy Marcusa page, which acts as a show page during the show. But you can call us as well. We would love to hear from you. 204-788-3205. Now, just before we turn to Abby for the regional forecast, I want to ask Corey about calls he's been making, because you've been, in our industry, we call it chasing. But You've been trying to get some people on the phone this morning.
A couple people. There's some guys who did a road trip down to Boston to cheer on their friend who was playing, Seth.
Yeah, Seth Jarvis.
Seth Jarvis. He's a right winger for Team Canada. They drove all the way down to Boston. Were there last night, so we're hoping to get him on the phone and talk about what that was like to be there and see their friend win it for Canada. Also, of course, trying to get Chantal Kreviazek to see if she'll come on to talk about it. She's a Winnipegger, and we're going to hopefully talk to her if we can get a hold of her to talk about why she changed the words to the anthem.
Yeah, so that'll be. We'll see if we get those. If those conversations get to air, they'll be happening sometime between 7 and 8:30.
Yeah, phone calls are being made.
While you already have the mic open, you want to talk traffic?
Yes, it's actually been a very quiet commute overall. Haven't heard of any major issues out there yet. But if you're walking, biking, driving, you see something, give me a call. That number 204-788-3093.
All right, thank you very much. Let's go to Abby now, who is here with our regional forecast.
Yeah, clear skies down south and increasing clouds further north. Winnipeg, we're looking at temperatures around -16 now. Expect a sunny start. The clouds will roll in the afternoon. Some light breeze later. We get to high of -19. Similar conditions we're seeing in the Pembina Valley region. -16 in Morris, Morden, Winkler, Altona, all the way down to the U.S. border. It's going to be mostly sunny this morning. Then some clouds will roll in the afternoon. We get to a high of -5 for that part of the province. Heading west, Brandon -20, clear. Mix of sun and clouds in the forecast today. You see a high of -4 today. Dauphin saw light snow earlier, but that's cleared right now. We are seeing temperatures around -15, -16 in the Parkland region. It's going to be mostly cloudy today. We still have that slight chance of flurries hanging around all day. You're going to see it off and on, but you warm up to around -3 later. In the Interlake region, we're seeing Gimli and surrounding areas hover around -17, -18 at this time under clear conditions. The Interlake region should be seeing a mix of sun and clouds today and some light breeze, high around -9. The powerful inflow, we're seeing temperatures -15 under cloudy conditions. There's a slight chance of flurries for that region, high -9. Then we move north to Thompson, where we're seeing temperatures around -17. It is mostly cloudy this morning. There's a good chance of light snow in the forecast for that part of the province. You warm up to -10 later today, and then further north in Churchill, temperatures around -23 and clear at this time. Some clouds will roll in later. There's also a good chance of light snow this afternoon. It gets windy at some point. You warm up to -15. So in summary, Marcy, down south, sunny start, some clouds will roll in. Up north, we're expecting light snow.
Sounds like a good Friday to me.
Good Friday.
All right, that's Abby Adiyemi with our forecast on CBC. I am Marcy Marcusa with our team here at the show. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app, or watching live on YouTube. We're Crystalie Ramlicans joining us now via Zoom with our business report. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Marcy.
So what is it? I got it before we turn business to business here. I mean, you played hockey. I've never played a stitch of hockey in my life. What does it feel like on the ice when you're finally done and you win and you throw the gloves off and it's been like a tense game?
There is no other feeling like that. So yeah, I've played hockey pretty much my whole life. I won 2 championships with my teams when I was there in Winnipeg, and we still remember it, even though it happened, when we were in high school. Some of our friends still talk about it and like how great a feeling of it, such a great feeling of accomplishment. And then, that you've this team, feeling together that you all won this together.
Yep.
I didn't get to watch the game last night because even though my friend texted me like, hey, come watch, I'm watching it at a pub because, we have to go to bed early with this job. But when I saw that headline, when I woke up this morning on my phone, I was like relieved. I was like, oh, thank God. This is so important to Canadians. We have to just win.
It's interesting. Your feeling was relief. So we're asking listeners, what the win meant to them. And so lots of different feelings, right? Excited, nervousness. That was more during the game. But relief, I think a lot of people will share that today. So this win will mean something to the players, but also to the nation. And we're asking you why. All right. Well, let's talk about why this was so charged. A lot of this was because of the relationship between our two countries right now, and because of the T word, tariffs. So let's talk about Donald Trump, the president in the States, proposing more tariffs now, this time on softwood lumber. So what effect could that have on our Canadian industry?
Yeah, that's right. So Trump is floating this idea of a 25% levy on forest products globally starting in April. But, the U.S. already imposes duties against lumber from Canada. And that's because Americans say, well, Canadian producers sell softwood below market value and because of what the U.S. sees as subsidized Canadian lumber. So if a new tariff is added on top of the current duties, the levy on softwood exports could be closer to 50 or 55%. Now, Canada's forestry sector says the tariffs are unnecessary and unwarranted, given that the U.S. currently meets only about 70% of its home building lumber needs domestically and uses Canadian lumber to fill that gap. But yeah, Trump has repeatedly said that the U.S. does not need Canadian resources. However, though, Canadian softwood accounts for almost a quarter of total U.S. lumber consumption. And though there is some hope for the industry, a decision from the U.S. Commerce Department on possibly revising duties is expected today.
Let's go to another story this morning making business news. The proposal of tariffs continues to affect our automotive sector as well, right?
Yeah, that's right. So Unifor says the threats and the repeal of electric vehicle initiatives are creating chaos and uncertainty in the North American auto industry. So most recently, the union is gravely concerned about an unexpected announcement from Stellantis that it is halting work at its Brampton assembly plant in Ontario. So the company has been retooling this plant for both electric and gas Jeep Compass vehicles. And the plant usually has about 3,000 workers, and production was supposed to start later this year. Now, the automaker says production plans are still in place, but the union has doubt because of the timing of the pause with all of the talk of tariffs. And, earlier this week, General Motors said if U.S. tariffs become permanent, the company would have to consider moving plants. So GM and other automakers are closely monitoring how tariffs on vehicles and parts from Canada, Mexico, and elsewhere will impact their business.
It's the conversation all over the country, right? Yesterday we were live at Peerless Garments. Big thanks to Albert Altassi who had us out there, Abdo Altassi rather. It was really nice to be on the factory floor with all the workers, and also just reminding ourselves in Manitoba how many things that we make here, right? And automotive parts actually came up as one of our exports from here as well. Let's move to another story. Executives at Meta could be getting bigger bonuses this year.
Yeah, that's right. So the company has approved an increase for its annual bonus plan. So some executives could earn a bonus of 200% of their base salary, up from the 75% they earned previously. But the updated plan does not apply to CEO Mark Zuckerberg. But this comes a week after Meta began laying off 5% of its overall workforce. And Meta has also slashed its annual distribution of stock options by about 10% for thousands of employees. Now, how did all of this happen? Well, a committee for Meta's board of directors approved the change after determining compensation was not as much as executives with similar positions at peer companies. And, Meta, the company, is doing quite well. Shares are up over 47% over the past year, which really underscores the investor enthusiasm over the social media company's growing digital ad sales and the potential for its AI investments to eventually generate big returns.
200%. As a bonus.
Of their base salary.
I took a pack of batteries from CBC once by accident home, and I was like devastated, and I brought them back to work. I don't know, context. What's happening in the market so far?
So in Europe, markets are up. Germany is up. The UK is up. France is up. In Asia, markets are higher as well. Japan, Shanghai, and Hong Kong are all up. Oil is down 64 cents to $71.84 US per barrel. Gold is down $5.30 to $2,933.60 US per ounce. And the dollar is down 1/10 cent to 70.5 cents US.
All right. Have a great weekend, Crystalie. Thank you so much.
You too, Marcy. Thanks.
That's Crystalie Ramlakan with our business news. She joins us each and every morning here on Information Radio right at this time.
The United States has been ripped off.
The stories that matter.
Canada will be responding
as they happen. We must put Canada first. At home and around the world.
We don't need the products that they have.
And what they mean to you. For news you can trust.
We're coming to you live.
Stay with CBC News.
Time right now is 6:46 a.m. It's Friday morning, and minus 16 is the temperature. Partly cloudy in Winnipeg. We are going to be today right around minus 9, and then the temperature rises overnight to about minus 5 by tomorrow morning, and then tomorrow's high minus 1. By Sunday, we could see periods of rain or snow and a high of 2 degrees. So that's your warning to not wash the car. Things are about to get messy and warmer. Well, up next on the program this morning, Pascal Saint-Onge says CBC Radio-Canada is neither a liberal or conservative issue, but a Canadian one. The Heritage Minister made that comment yesterday as she unveiled her vision for the public broadcaster's future. It includes increasing the CBC's funding, banning streaming subscription fees and ads during news programming, and enshrining the CBC's role in fighting disinformation in law. Saint-Onge spoke with the CBC's Helen Mann on As It Happens last night.
What I'm worried is that there is no longer a public broadcaster, and that what's left is X or Facebook, and that we no longer have our Canadian means of communications. We know that the private sector is also struggling because of the loss of advertisement revenues that are going more and more to those tech billionaires. So it is more important than ever that Canadians can rely on a public service that belongs to them.
You have said that the future of the CBC is a national security issue. How so?
Well, even the Foreign Interference Commission has concluded that one of the best ways that Canadians can be more resilient against disinformation or foreign interference and propaganda is making sure that we have Canadian-owned media with Canadian voices that are telling Canadian stories, and of course stories from the international. So in a context where we know that Russia, China, and other countries are trying to destabilize democracy, it's more important than ever that we have a strong public broadcaster. And this is why I'm saying that when we're talking about Canada's sovereignty, when we're talking about investing in our defense, in the army, in the borders, we should be also talking about investing and defending Canadians against disinformation and propaganda and foreign influence. And for that, we need a strong public broadcaster.
You announced you are not running in the next election. And if we look at opinion polls, and they're to be believed, it would say to us that the Liberals have a lot of work to do if they hope to get back into office. So how likely is it that your vision of the CBC ends up being nothing more than words on paper?
Well, this vision is proposed to Canadians, and it is proposed also for the candidates that wish to be leaders of the Liberal Party. And I'm expecting them to commit to implementing this roadmap to a better CBC as soon as they get the opportunity to do so.
Let's dig into some of the details in the announcement. You want to enshrine into legislation CBC's role to fight misinformation and disinformation, as well as provide reliable information during national emergencies. What would putting that into law actually change?
It would anchor the mission of the CBC into today's reality. And we saw that Canadians, for example, during the Jasper wildfires, that Canadians were having a hard time finding reliable information on tech platforms. And this is why it's so important that CBC and Radio-Canada is accessible, so that Canadians in time of emergency can know that they can turn to CBC Radio-Canada, whether it's on the radio, on the internet, or on television.
And yet Canadian news has not been available on meta platforms like Instagram or Facebook since the passage of the Online News Act in 2023. So does it really matter if CBC can't reach people where they're getting their news?
Well, people are still turning to the CBC Radio-Canada platform. Of course, television ratings have gone down, but it's gone down for every broadcaster because people are turning away from television and consuming their content more and more on their digital platforms. And if you look at how many Canadians are going on one or the other platform from the CBC, it's more than half of Canadian population every month. So that means that CBC is still where people turn to, and especially at times where there is disruption, like it's happening right now with our relationship with the United States. The ratings have gone up for CBC and Radio-Canada across the country because people know that they can turn to their public broadcaster for fair and factual information.
That's Pascal Saint-Onge, Minister of Canadian Heritage, in conversation with As It Happens last night with the CBC's Helen Mann. It is now 8 minutes to 7 o'clock on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. You're listening to Information Radio. This is the morning show. We're live in downtown Winnipeg. And thanks so much for joining us today. Minus 16 in the city. It is mostly clear. In Brandon, it is clear. It's minus 19. Up in Thompson, mostly cloudy and minus 17. What's nice about this cold snap, taking a turn is it's not just for one part of the province. The entire province was frigid, and now the entire province is looking at brighter, more beautiful days. So today's high in Winnipeg, minus 9, as we've been telling you. Over in Brandon, minus 4, and up in Thompson, it is minus 10. Well, up next on the show, in December, Manitoba confirmed its first case of avian influenza in domestic birds for 2024 at a commercial poultry operation in Portage la Prairie. Fast forward a month and a half, and now the Public Health Agency of Canada has purchased 500,000 doses of a vaccine to protect humans against avian flu. Now, the move that was announced this week comes as farms across the states and Canada have been forced to cull millions of infected birds. Canadian health officials say there's only been one domestic human case and no evidence of person-to-person spread. So to talk more about this, Earl Brown joins us via Zoom. He is an emeritus professor of virology at the University of Ottawa. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Marcy.
So tell me a little bit more about why this is needed, given, no evidence of person-to-person spread, because people might feel alarmed when they hear this.
Right. No, it's not time for alarm. So the concern is that higher risk of humans getting infected with this virus, because this virus is becoming more prevalent in our environment. And so the concern is that this virus could adapt to humans, and so it would have to get into humans and then be able to spread person to person. Now, we're getting a few human infections, 70 people infected in the U.S. in the last 2 years. One Canadian got a serious infection last fall out in BC, a young person. And as this virus has increased in our farms and increased in nature, they felt it's time now to vaccinate those people at risk of contacting this virus to try to break that possibility. So Canada has licensed a new virus vaccine. So it's a H5N1 vaccine against the highly pathogenic virus that's out there in nature. And so this virus was the first vaccine for H5N1 in Canada was 2013, but now they've made an updated version, and so that's what we're hearing about now. And so people should be aware that this virus is becoming more prevalent in our environments, in our wildlife, and increasing problem in the farms. and that this vaccine is made to address that.
What is the plan for rollout of this kind of an immunization? Like, who would get it, and how's that decided about, when they should get it? What is that going to look like?
Well, the National Advisory Committee for Immunization makes policy on vaccines. They look at the facts, they certify the vaccines, and they give advisory to the provinces, and the provinces will administer the vaccine. So province by province may be a little bit different, but they're going to be giving it to the farmers for sure, the people who raise the birds, and all the people along the processing line. So bird handlers, shippers, slaughterhouse employees, veterinarians, lab workers who test samples from animals to identify infections. Those people who could contact the virus will be offered this vaccine for protection.
In terms of prevention, how can we slow or stop the spread of avian flu in Canada?
Well, this virus is well planted in wildlife, so it's spread by wild waterfowl. Highly pathogenic, and the virus that's normally in waterfowl, that's where all the different influenza strains come from, is waterfowl. Is a mild infection in waterfowl. They don't get sick. It's low pathogenic. But when that virus gets into the barns, it becomes a highly pathogenic version, which we've now got, has contaminated the wildlife as well. So it's spread by the birds, but it's killing our poultry flocks. And poultry farmers always worry about avian influenza, and so they use biosecurity. They essentially lock down the places, and netting and disinfection and changing clothes and boots and all that sort of thing. But in spite of all that biosecurity, a lot of farms are getting infected. More than 60 farms in BC infected just since last fall. And so the farmers are losing the battle a little bit. So there's more and more of this virus out there. It spread into cows last year in the U.S. and is moving through the cow herds, over 1,000 herds.
So is there, just to interject here, are there any new, given how it's spreading and changed, and you're talking about what farmers have, long done since avian flu has been present in the world and in Canada, are there any new prevention methods that people should know about?
Well, the farmers are moving to vaccination. So that's the best method for preventing a virus infection. And so we use it in humans. Farmers use it routinely for all their infections of concern. They don't want to vaccinate against avian influenza because they won't be able to ship unprocessed meat or live birds out of their country once they vaccinate. You lose your bird flu free status. So farmers don't want to vaccinate, but if you can't raise a bird without it dying from avian flu, you're going to have to vaccinate. Yeah. China vaccinates. France has started to vaccinate Egypt. So we may have to vaccinate our birds.
We may have to follow suit in Canada. Thank you very much for your time this morning and your expertise on it. I appreciate it.
Good to talk to you, Marcy.
It is Earl Brown, an emeritus professor of virology at the University of Ottawa. 2 minutes to 7 o'clock. Heather Wells in with headlines.
Good morning. Well, what a big win. Canadians across the country feeling extra proud this morning after Team Canada beat the USA 3-2 in overtime in the Four Nations face-off. And if you think you have something to cheer about, imagine what it was like. Well, you don't have to imagine. This is what it was like in the Team Canada locker room after that win.
We are the champions, my friend.
They are celebrating. We're going to hear more about that big win throughout the show, and we'll have a little bit more for you coming up in our news at the bottom of the clock as well. The Women's Health Clinic has suspended in-person appointments at its Graham Avenue clinic because of flooding. Just the latest incident to plague that 60-year-old community clinic on Graham. More Manitoba news coming up for you at 7:30.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Minus 16 in Winnipeg. Traffic's moving fine and still ahead on the show. 35 years of the wonderful wedding show. We're going to find out what's up this weekend if you're heading to that event. In addition to civic politics, the feds could help pay for our much-needed North End sewage treatment plant, but there are strings attached to the money that's flowing our way. We'll find out why one councillor worries that Winnipeg may be willing to give up too much in exchange for that funding. So stay tuned. That and much more hockey celebration on Information Radio. Right now, the World Report.
Today on The Current.
I'm here.
The Russian president says a military
I'm ready to go.
operation is now underway in eastern Ukraine. Ukraine's foreign minister calls it a full-scale invasion.
I'm Peter Armstrong. At the 3-year mark of the Ukraine war, there's some hope for peace, but great fear from that country that it will come at a very high cost. How Ukrainians are vowing to preserve their identity and not repeat history on The Current.
The Current, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Martina Fitzgerald. From Vancouver, all the way across the country to Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia. Cheers ring out as Canadians celebrate Canada's 3-2 victory over the United States last night in the championship game of the Four Nations Cup. It came during a low point in the relationship between our two countries. The CBC's Jamie Strachan has more from Boston.
In the end, the finals of the Four Nations Cup delivered, and who else to end it but Connor McDavid. The Edmonton Oilers superstar ripped a shot into the top corner just over 8 minutes into overtime, the Canadian bench erupting in jubilation. The championship game was played at a feverish pace, the first time the league's best players have faced each other in more than a decade, adding fuel the political tension that loomed over the final, driven by U.S. President Donald Trump, who continued his jibes about Canada becoming the 51st state in the hours leading up to puck drop. The tension carried into the heavily partisan American crowd, who showered the Canadian anthem with boos. U.S. fans sang the Star-Spangled Banner in unison at a deafening level. But Canada had the last laugh, quieting the American crowd and capturing the title at a tournament that far exceeded expectations. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Boston.
That booing that Jamie just mentioned only tells part of the story regarding national anthems. There was an alteration to O Canada by Chantal Kreviazuk.
True patriot love that only us command.
Did you hear that? Kreviazuk made a slight adjustment to the lyrics, singing that only us command. Despite continued jabs by President Trump before the match, Prime Minister Trudeau had the last word, at least so far, posting on social media, "You can't take our country, and you can't take our game." The premiers of Nova Scotia and Ontario are in the U.S. Capitol this morning. They're meeting with governors from several states attending a conference in Washington. The CBC's Cameron McIntosh is on this story for us and joins us from Washington with more. Cam, what are the premiers trying to do?
Well, quite simply, it's just about being seen and heard. Ontario Premier Doug Ford, Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston are both here. Now, relations with Canada aren't formally on the agenda for the governors, but the premiers are just trying to take advantage of an opportunity with nearly all the governors and hundreds of state officials all in one place. They're trying to talk to whoever they can, Republican, Democrat, just building the case for partnership with Canada in the face of President Trump's tariff threats. Here now is Premier Tim Houston.
No tariffs. I mean, ultimately, that's what we're trying to get to. But it's a process. You know, we understand that. So we just continue to talk about how the impact it can be. You know, put the price up for Americans, have an impact on Canadians, have an impact on Nova Scotians. So the success is just getting people to listen and engage in dialogue.
Now, I should mention he's been walking around in a red Team Canada jersey, so that certainly will be a conversation starter in D.C. today. This also builds on similar lobbying last week when all 13 premiers are here. They got a meeting with some Trump officials, both sides saying the dialogue was positive, but certainly no promises made.
So no promises, but what are the governors saying about all this?
Well, plenty of them really do share Canada's concerns. Not only does Canada do billions of dollars in trade with the U.S. each day, Canada is the top export market for 36 states. So they're concerned about retaliation, though the Republican governors are towing the Trump line. Now, while Houston and Ford say conversations are positive, they also say it's just not front of mind like it is in Canada. Other issues like border security, fentanyl are big on the agenda here, and President Trump is speaking to the governors later today. The big challenge for these two premiers is just getting on the radar as that March 4th tariff deadline looms.
And that is the CBC's Cam McIntosh in Washington. Thanks so much, Cam.
My pleasure.
האכזריות של מפלצות החמאס אינה יודעת שום גבול.
Israel's prime minister saying Hamas's cruelty knows no bounds. Benjamin Netanyahu, speaking after a body returned to Israel, was determined to not be that of a hostage taken by Hamas. The body of Shari Bibas was supposed to be returned, along with those of her 2 children yesterday, but Israeli investigators say the body was that of an unidentified Gaza woman. Lieutenant Colonel Nadav Shoshani is an Israeli defense spokesperson. He says the finding came after a long forensic process.
You know, we have DNA of all the hostages, and we've checked time and time again, and we came to the result that it's not Shiri, that it's not any of our hostages. And it is apparent it is just an anonymous person from Gaza.
Hamas says the remains appear to have been mixed with others in the rubble from an Israeli airstrike. The militant group has released the names of the 6 hostages, all alive, to be released tomorrow. An Ontario man says the province's healthcare system is not listening to people with traumatic brain injuries. He spent most of the past 16 years in hospital after an accident left him requiring 24-hour assistance. As Matthew Kupfer reports now, finding that support is presenting a whole set of new challenges.
Can you slip your arm in here for me? Corrine Rakowski helps her twin brother put on a sweater in his room at the Renfrew Victoria Hospital. It's where Ken Rakowski has had to make a home for most of the last 16 years.
Kids have more freedom than I do.
A brain injury affects his speech. He feels criminals have more freedom than him. The 53-year-old has other cognitive impairments and also uses a wheelchair. He was first admitted in 2009 after a car crash and spent about a year and a half at Pathways to Independence, a home for people with acquired brain injuries. But Corrine says she worried about his safety. Then he was injured during a bed transfer and sent to hospital. It's devastating, going back to the hospital where we don't want to be. Pathways to Independence wouldn't comment on Ken's case, but say staff are all trained in bed transfers and lifts, and it is focused on individualized care. Corrine's continuing to fight for appropriate care for Ken to live somewhere else in the community.
And it's something that we really do need to strongly advocate for.
Ruth Wilcock is the president of the Ontario Brain Injury Association. She says there are others in situations similar to Rakowski's and not enough space in the province's 33 community living homes for people with acquired brain injury.
Government has invested in a few extra beds in some places, but comparatively the need to what's been invested there's a huge gap still.
Meanwhile, Ken waits.
I want to get back in this field.
Until he can get back out into the world. Matthew Kupfer, CBC News, Renfrew, Ontario.
A British Columbia man is putting tariff tensions aside and reaching across the border. He's invited thousands of Americans to visit his hometown, Nanaimo. The message, shared on TikTok, has taken off among Americans as a way to protest President Trump's treatment of Canada. Georgie Smythe has more.
Hey, Americans who support Canadians, I have an idea. What if we picked a day in like a month and a half or so where all of you come up here to Vancouver Island?
Todd Maffin is throwing down the welcome mat for thousands of Americans.
Should we do this?
To support Canada by signing up to visit his town, Nanaimo, in the spring. The invite and the video went viral down south, provoking shares like this.
He says, hey, $1 worth of $1.46 up here, right?
Maffin, who's a business journalist, says the idea was kind of an accident, but could have a huge positive impact on the seaside town.
And we're past 2,000 people now. If 10% of those 2,000 show up, 200 people, is still going to be, I think, a pretty decent boost to the Mid-Island's economies.
The local tourism board has already got hotel bookings from people as far as Texas and Florida. Maffin included videos and maps explaining how to get to Nanaimo.
You're going to be coming mostly through the Peace Arch border crossing, and you're going to be driving north into Canada.
Nanaimo Mayor Leonard Krogh says after some initial confusion, the town is ready to host.
The prospect of taking money from American tourists during this particularly challenging time in our relationship with the United States is very appealing to me.
Canadians and Americans trading travel tips again instead of tariffs for now. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Vancouver.
And that is the latest from World Report. 10 minutes is all it takes to get the international, national, and this morning, the hockey news you need from CBC. Why not make it a habit? Follow World Report today and every day, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Martina Fitzgerald.
Good morning, everyone. Well, Manitobans, you are writing into the show this morning about what that win meant to you last night. Definitely a spirit lifter, Brenda Beck wrote in. So proud of the team and Canada. So we're going to share more of those comments in a moment. Good morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. This is CBC and this hour on the program. In addition to talking hockey and trying to reach some Winnipeggers who were at that game last night, we have these stories for you. We're going to talk wonderful wedding show. 35 years of celebrating all things wedding in our community, and the 35th edition is happening this weekend. We're going to touch base with the organizer, one of the organizers, about the trends and what they're expecting from the show, so stay tuned for that. Also, a local ramen shop says every bowl of soup is a great food adventure. CBC's Jim Agapito went out to find out what that means at a really interesting business in the city. And I will mention that we have some civic politics to talk about this morning, too, because at 10 to 8, we're going to hear about how the feds could help pay for the much-needed North End sewage treatment plant. But there are some strings attached, and one city councillor still has some concerns about that. You may have heard the mayor saying that we really need this funding. So stay tuned. We're going to hear from Councillor Brian Mays this hour, and that's coming up just before 8. Right now, Heather Wells is in with other headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a dream wedding turned into a bit of a nightmare in Mexico, and now some Manitobans are filing complaints with Mexico's health authority. They got sick at the all-inclusive Sandos Playa Car Resort at Playa del Carmen. We're going to hear from Nelson Azevedo, who was at the resort. He was supposed to officiate his niece's wedding, but she was one of the 31 people who got sick. There were in that group 33, so only 2 were spared. So we're going to hear what happened there. As well, an outreach organization in Winnipeg is calling for more safe spaces for young people after a string of violent incidents in the North End. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 7:30.
Hey, Heather, you want to hear some of the comments people are writing in?
I'd love to.
All right, and then we'll turn to our warmer forecast and the good drive that we're having so far. So we did ask, as I mentioned, what did the hockey win mean to you last night? And Mandy Dissereau Grayston wrote in, the positive thing out of this whole Trump situation is he's made Canadians patriotic. We were a lot more quiet about it before. She writes, I would agree with that. How about you?
Yeah, we found our voice.
Yeah. Carol McMillan said, best feeling ever. Ted Franson writing in, elation, relief, national pride on one hand, but on the other hand, recognition that it was just a hockey game played by well-paid, some would say overpaid Canadians in a game that means little in the scheme of things. So he's looking at this from a different perspective, and also looking at the serious issues, right? The challenge, he writes, will be to leverage the national pride and unifying effect of this event into meaningful change into even or other aspects of life. And he writes healthcare, education, TRC, eradicating poverty and hunger. So he's looking at the bigger picture. Percy Phillips writing, it's a hockey game and the tariffs cometh, but what a morale booster for the country from, he writes, McJesus, and my Oiler fans and relatives call him that. Obviously, McDavid.
McJesus.
And says, so Percy Phillips writing in, and if it was, pardon me. And he writes, if Trump says it was fixed, just remember that it was... Pardon me. I'm not going to read that part of the comment. I don't want to do anything derogatory on the air here, so I'm going to move on. Rhonda Head says, last night, here's what the game means to her, that Trump is now the 14th premier. I'm going to leave it at that. I like that line. All right. Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
Heather's back with next local news at 7:30. If you want to write to us, please write to us on Facebook or call us. What the game mean to you last night and why? 788-3205. Okay, Abby has the good news about the weekend.
Yeah, we're looking at clear skies in some areas down south. The clouds will roll in later, and then we're expecting some frigid conditions and wind chills in the northern part of the province with some light snow. The thing with most of the regions, we're seeing minus 17 in almost every part of the country, province this morning, except for Churchill around minus 23. Winnipeg sitting at minus 16, clear outside. A mainly sunny start ahead, but the clouds will move in later as we get close to the lunch hour. It's going to get to a high of -9, and then later tonight we even drop even further. We warm up further, rather. And then tonight, some partly cloudy conditions. We're going to see -5, as mentioned tonight. In other regions, Westman, Parkland, Interlake region, we're going to see sunshine this morning, then some clouds will roll in, while up north is bracing for just a bit of light snow. So in summary, Winnipeg, we're going to get some clouds rolling after the sunshine this afternoon, and we'll warm up to a high of -9.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Listen, we tried to get Chantal Kreviasik, but Corey, you just heard from her.
Yeah, she's got a plane to catch this morning, so it doesn't quite work out. But who knows? Maybe later on today, it's tough to know.
A lot of people talking about her changing the anthem last night. You can also weigh in on that, by the way. What did you think of that? 788-3205. You're here to talk commute.
Yes, it's been a very quiet commute overall. I haven't heard of any major issues out there. Sidewalks on my run were looking good. I actually ran home on the river yesterday, and the river trail is looking gorgeous.
Pretty, eh?
Right now with the weather warmer, we're actually going to pick up our kid from daycare today after work and take him down for the first skate of the year that we've been on the river so far. So, because finally you can get out and it doesn't hurt your face, and you won't have a sad toddler, so it'll be fun.
Nobody wants a sad toddler
No,
with a hurt face.
Not at all. Not at all. So today we're going to do it. It'll be fun.
Where should people call you?
204-788-3093.
Well, the 35th Wonderful Wedding Show is happening this weekend. Organizers are hoping to warm people up with a floral theme for this year's showcase. They're calling it 35 Years of Love in Bloom. Brooke Pluta is the exhibitor, coordinator, and show manager for the Wonderful Wedding Show, and she joins us via Zoom this morning to talk more about some of the trends this year and, of course, what's happening this weekend. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
35 years. That's a long time in the community. What can people expect this year?
Yeah, we've got some really exciting features. We have a backyard wedding bar and bistro. We've got food trucks, a mobile bar. We have, of course, our inspiration gallery where vendors have gone all out for their table, and you can vote for your most inspiring one. And of course, our biggest showcase is the fashion show. We have amazing local retailers, and it's going to be fabulous. I cannot wait for everyone to enjoy it.
I just looked up what 35 years what the gift is. You know how year one, I think, is paper or something? And is that why you're wearing that shirt? Because it's coral.
It is coral.
Yeah. And it looks like you're wearing a coral shirt today on Zoom, so you're dressed appropriately.
Absolutely.
What are the biggest trends then, especially when you're looking at whether, I mean, times are really difficult economically. So I'm just curious whether or not one of the trends might be how to do all of this on a budget.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the enjoyment of the wedding show, is that it's supposed to be inspiring and get your juices flowing, get you excited about your wedding, get to talk to local vendors. There's truly something for everybody at every budget. One of our big decor companies, their sign literally says something for everyone for every budget. So I think people are going to be really pleased with the variety that we have at the show this year, and it's going to be absolutely wonderful.
What are some of the actual trends when it comes to fashion or when it comes to, I guess, colors? There's always sort of, visual trends for weddings.
Oh, absolutely. This year we're seeing a lot of florals, a lot of appliques, lots of lace, pearls, bows. We're seeing a lot of that. So our fashion show is definitely going to mirror what's going on there.
How much are the 80s back? Are we getting to the puffy sleeves and cutouts yet, or are we not quite there?
I don't think we're quite there yet, but I'm sure it's not far off.
In terms of your vendors, can you talk a little bit more about who actually exhibits at the wedding show? If someone's listening and they've never been there, like, will they find it's not just about dresses and fashion shows? It's also about, down to the last minutia, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we have everything from content creators, photography, videography. We have that side covered. We have cakes. We have decor. We have some unique services. We have like a disco bus that's parked in there. We've got limos. We've got everything. Anything you can think of for your wedding, it is going to be represented at the wedding show. And like I said, I think there's something for everyone. It's 100,000 square feet of everything wedding. So like I said, come prepared, wear comfy shoes, and just be ready to be inspired.
Is there any wedding trend that surprised you this year?
Oh, that's a tough one. There are so many that I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I've seen that. But I really think I'm surprised how nice and simple things are getting, like just so simple and clean, and everybody just has a really clean eye, a great design, really thoughtful, intentional. Those are the things that are really popping out to me this year, and I think you'll see that in a lot of the booths.
What should people know if they're attending this show? Is it, I mean, because sometimes you see people come with a whole bunch of people, sometimes people come on their own. What should you actually know about attending and navigating this show?
I've done both as a guest. So I've been by myself just with my mom, and then I came with my wedding party. Both were fabulous. Both were amazing. I've been as a bride and I've been as a bridesmaid. So I think that everybody can kind of get a piece of it. I always love seeing the big groups, and we have a bunch of selfie stations. So we have a red carpet grand entrance, and we have a few things in our backyard bar and bistro for photo ops. So I'm really excited for big groups to come and get some photos, or come by yourself even. Sign up as a very important bride. You get a gift bag with a journal and a VIP post-planning webinar. So there's tons of great things to take advantage of. There's a ton of great giveaways too. So if you're just around in the area and you're by yourself, come on in and take a lap or two.
What are some of your favorite stories that you've heard from people about, about the Wonderful Wedding Show?
Yeah, I've heard so many vendors talk about, we've been moving in since Wednesday. Some people have been doing the show for over 25 years now. And every year they say, wow, I can't believe it's here already again. And they just love connecting with the community, with the new brides, because there's always new brides every year. So there's familiar faces, old faces, new faces. So I think it's just exciting for the vendors to be able to connect with the brides on that very intimate level. So it's really great.
Well, enjoy it, Brooke. You're going to have a beautiful weekend. So, and that matters because sometimes, when people are freezing and they're shuffling over to the wedding show, but you should have people that'll be able to park and have a nice walk and enjoy their day with their entourage.
It's going to be wonderful.
Take care.
You too. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you for being up and with us. That's Brooke Pluta. She's exhibitor coordinator and show manager for the Wonderful Wedding Show. So it's happening Saturday and Sunday, 10 to 5. It's at the RBC Convention Center. It is their 35th year.
Breaking news happens anywhere, anytime.
Police have warned the protesters repeatedly, get back.
CBC News brings the story to you as it happens.
Hundreds of wildfires are burning.
Be the first to know what's going on and what that means for you and for Canadians.
This situation has changed very quickly.
Helping make sense of the world when it matters most. Stay in the know. CBC News.
7:22 a.m. is the time right now. Sports coming up in a few minutes from now, and it's minus 16 in Winnipeg. The commute is going well this morning so far, so it's still dry out there before our temperatures get warmer and it gets messy. 788-3093 if you need to reach us. Bit of music before sports. Orchidea is a member of the band Pony Girl and has been a part of the Canadian music landscape for a long time, but now she has a release as a solo performer. So this is the first single from Orchidea. It's Sun and the Stars.
Crossing all ocean over to you. We can dream of the sunrise too. We can dream of the sunrise too. Loving you beyond compare, far beneath the surface. Holding on to your black stare, long after sunset. I can tell the difference from you, from me. I can see the distance from you, from me.
It's Circuit A with Sun and the Stars. You can look for the album True Beginnings, set for release in April. 7:25 a.m. That feels like Friday music, right? I'm digging it. Let's get into what's happening after a win last night. Canada back atop the hockey world. Let's get into what's happening in sports. Is there any other story to lead with, Scott Regehr?
Well, if there is, it's news to me.
I think
I've
not.
been up all night following this thing, so I'm talking about it one way or another.
So I just want to read Suzanne Brennan's comment from here, where we are in Winnipeg. We asked people, here locally, like, what did that mean? Win to you, Canada over the U.S. Four Nations Cup last night. She said in overtime, she said what it meant to me was when the team sang the national anthem, you could see the pride. They were Canadian, and Hellebuck went down on one knee in honor of our win, which was true sportsmanship and respect. So Winnipeggers weighing in on it a lot. What are you hearing? What do you want to say about the game?
Well, I mean, back atop the hockey world, and it was the world's best player that determined things last night, Marcy. Halfway through the first overtime period, Connor McDavid beat the Americans after a sweet pass by Mitch Marner. It clinched the Four Nations face-off title and put to rest, for now at least, talk of the U.S. being the new world power in the sport. McDavid's winner also kept Canada's streak alive, topping best-on-best competitions dating back to Sidney Crosby's golden goal at the Vancouver Olympics. So, is McDavid ready to carry the mantle for Crosby as this country's new talisman?
Well, I think you're going to see Sid in 12 months, so I don't think this is a passing of any torch. So, Sid had a great tournament. He was a big part of our group, and I think you'll see him in a year's time.
McDavid, of course, referring to the Olympics in Italy, where NHLers will be back after a 2-games hiatus, including an almost 40-year-old Sid the Kid Crosby. It is safe to assume John Cooper will return as Canada's coach for the games in Italy. For now, though, he's relishing his country's achievement over the past week and a half.
I just hope Canada's proud, because every player in that room is proud to be a Canadian. And yeah, did we need a win? Not only like our team, but Canada needed a win. And the players bared that on their shoulders.
Did they ever? Canada, Four Nations face-off champions, Marcy.
And I'm sorry, I know we talk about the goal scorers, but Binnington, wow.
The glove save he made on Brady Tkachuk early in overtime was one of the best I've ever seen under such pressure-filled circumstances.
If all you watch is overtime, just, or all you watch is the game. If you missed it, just watch that overtime.
Yep.
All right, this was more than a hockey game for lots of reasons, to lots of people. What did you make of the politics surrounding this?
Well, Chantal Kreviazik's, for me, wasn't the prettiest rendition necessarily of O Canada I've ever heard, but it was pretty darn poignant.
True patriot love that only us command.
To a chorus of Boston fans booing, a change in lyrics to a Canada that only us command. Hers was not the only creative license taken last night. The much glitzier performer who followed concluded the Star-Spangled Banner with a long pause and a knowing smile before she belted out the home of the brave, as if to suggest her country, and maybe its leader, is unique in that regard. Players like Connor McDavid have bristled at reporters' questions of late, Marcy, that they've perceived as being too political, and that is understandable at one level when you consider the uniquely enmeshed American-Canadian League that the NHL is. But ignoring the politics, suggesting they should be separate from the sport, well, that's impossible. In fact, that stance is political in and of itself. With that in mind, I got a kick out of a text I received from a friend of mine in Vancouver last night right after the game. He mused, as many others did online, over whether, since Canada prevailed, Trump might consider joining Canada as its 11th province.
Yeah, you know what? People are having similar clips this morning on our threads too.
Yep.
All right, let's just mention one thing about Chantal Kreviazik, because we tried to get her on the show this morning. She's on a plane during the show, so we can't get her. So later today, we're going to try to get her. Of course, she's originally from Winnipeg.
Yep.
We got to talk curling though before you go.
Yeah, Carrie Anderson, specifically, the Gimli native, who's won the Tournament of Hearts 4 times before, is well positioned to maybe win a 5th in Thunder Bay. She won her matches over Ontario and over Caitlin Laws, also of Manitoba. So she finishes as Anderson at 6-2 in the round robin. Next up, a big match today at noon, and with a win there, she is through to the Page playoffs. Anderson taking on Alberta's Kayla Skrillick at noon. Good luck to her.
Have an awesome weekend, Scott. Thank you.
You bet. You too.
Scott Reguer with Morning Sports. So we have a fun story coming up after the news. We're going to take you to a local restaurant that combines ramen and fantasy themes from Japanese comic books. Stay tuned. Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. The warm-up has finally arrived. We are on the way up. A bit of a southerly breeze today and some sunshine this morning, taking us this afternoon to a high of -9, and that warm-up continues right through the weekend. Well, some Manitobans are filing complaints with Mexico's health authority after getting sick at the all-inclusive Santos Playa Car Resort at Playa del Carmen. Nelson Azevedo was at the resort to officiate his niece's wedding, but just 2 days in, what was supposed to be a joyous occasion took a turn for the worst. Azevedo says 31 out of 33 people in the wedding party, including the bride, became severely ill.
It destroyed the whole trip. My niece's wedding was postponed. She couldn't make it.
And CBC Manitoba heard from others across the country as well who had similar illnesses while staying at Santos Playa Car. The resort blames it on an increase in stomach viruses in Canada and the U.S., including the norovirus. A string of violence in Winnipeg's North End has an organization pushing for more youth programming. Brandy Bobier runs Community Helpers Unite. She says drug addiction and poverty are behind a spike in crime in the area. Bobier wants to see more safe spaces for young people where they can feel like they're being supported and heard.
That's why they're reaching out to gangs more, is because they get that sense of community, that sense of family. And it ties hand in hand with drugs and weapons.
Over the last week, 2 people have died and 1 person was injured in 2 separate shootings. The Women's Health Clinic has suspended in-person appointments at its Graham Avenue clinic because of flooding. While a CBC camera was there yesterday, part of the ceiling collapsed.
Electronic now, so...
This is the latest incident to plague that 60-year-old community clinic. On the long weekend, the boiler quit, the pipes froze, and then leaked. Health Minister Uzoma Asseguera says their department provided heaters and generators. It's the second time building issues have disrupted patient services in the last 7 months.
It's not acceptable. We've been meeting frequently with the Women's Health Clinic. We've been down at the location to meet with the team there, and we've been in regular conversations with them about not only the building but the services and how we can work together to strengthen them.
Asseguera says it's going to be up to the clinic to make sure the building is safe before resuming in-person appointments. Gambler First Nation near Russell has been hunting for a doctor for 6 years. Now they're opening a clinic in early March with a Brazilian doctor, Igor Chincaru. For the first year, he will be a clinical assistant as he finalizes becoming a practicing physician in Canada. Gambler Chief David Ledoux says the provincial West Central Manitoba Immigration Initiative helped them find Chincaru. He says together they're making sure on-reserve members have better health care.
It felt good. We had a lot of people helping us, I guess, getting across the finish line, so it was really pleasant to get this doctor in our community.
Ledoux says there is a chance the clinic will be open to surrounding communities in the future, but for now, his patient list will consist of the 89 on-reserve members. An education leader is concerned about misinformation surrounding books in Manitoba schools. Progressive Conservative leadership candidate Wally Dowdrich says school libraries are carrying pornographic material. He made that allegation at this week's PC leadership debate in Brandon. After the debate, an audience member showed CBC a book depicting sexual activities. But Manitoba School Boards Association President Sandy Nemeth says there is no book like that in Manitoba schools.
What people need to know is that if at any given time they believe that they know this to be true, and Mr. Doddridge included, they should be contacting their school division office and ask for some clarity and some conversation.
Dowdrich would not say where the books he referenced can be found. Well, as we've been hearing, it was a shot heard right across the country.
Centering pass, McDavid scores! Connor McDavid wins it for Canada!
In Boston last night, Connor McDavid scoring the game winner in overtime as Canada beat the United States, capturing the inaugural Four Nations Face-Off tournament. 3-2 the final score, and here in Canada, the celebration was on.
It's great. It's great. Go, Canada, go!
It's a big deal for our country politically right now with everything going on, and also hockey's our sport.
I'm proud of my country.
And on social media, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau commenting, saying, "You can't take our country and you can't take our game." One thing I should note, a lot of people were talking about the battle of the goalies. Connor Hellebuck, a Winnipeg Jet, he's for the U.S. Then Jordan Biddington from the St. Louis Blues playing for Canada in net. And tomorrow, it's back to Winnipeg Jets hockey. And who's playing? St. Louis and Winnipeg, pitting those two goalies against each other once again. You can find more Manitoba news at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
One other thing that we haven't talked about yet, and a listener wrote to me about this, so that's why I'm sharing this. Deb Bosch wrote in, she's so proud of them, talking about the team last night, Heather. She writes, except for the Gretzky insult, it was awesome. So there are some people that viewed Wayne Gretzky being our honorary captain as a miss for them. And I think that is because he is a known Trump supporter, and some people also commenting that he didn't wear our jersey as honorary captain.
Yeah,
so,
he came out in a suit jacket, yeah.
So some comments on that as well coming in. But all right, yeah, that matchup, as you said, Binnington and Hellebuck, man, they were both fantastic.
Incredible. And Binnington really stood on his head last night.
He did. But Hellebuck, too, I know that at one point in the game, people were like, dang, Hellebuck, why is he so good? Like, yay, he's so good, but like out of Winnipeg.
Yeah.
You know what? It's hard to be on the other side of him, right?
Well, now we get to go back to the right side of him.
We'll enjoy that. All right. Thank you, Heath.
Thank you.
It's time for our regional forecast on CBC's Information Radio, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Abby Adiemi is here with those details.
It's clear outside, and that sun that will be warming things up. It's making its appearance in most of the regions right now. Winnipeg, we will be seeing a sunny morning. The clouds will roll in later in the afternoon. We get to a high of -9 today. And then as we get into tomorrow morning, we should be waking up to -5. Similar conditions we're going to see in the Pembina Valley region to Winnipeg with temperatures around -15 at this time. Heading west to Brandon, -18 and clear. We also have a mix of sun and clouds in the forecast today. High will be around -4. For tonight, partly cloudy. You warm up to -10. Dublin, we're sitting at -15 and cloudy at this time. Mostly cloudy conditions you will have for that part of the province with a slight chance of light snow in the forecast. We get to a high of -3 for the Parkland region. In Gimli, -17 and clear. The Interlake region will also see a mix of sun and clouds today. Highs around -9. The Powerful Influence, good morning to you. You're sitting at -15 at this time. Cloudy there, a chance of light snow also in the forecast, high -9. Moving north to Thompson, where we're seeing temperatures hover between -16 and -17 and mostly cloudy. It's going to stay mostly cloudy today, and we do have a good chance of light snow in that part of the province, high around -10. That should clear as you get into the overnight period. And then for Churchill, -22 we're seeing at this time. Some clouds will roll in, light snow this afternoon, some breezy conditions, and a high of minus 15. So down south, Marcy, it's going to be sunny start, and then some clouds will roll in, while up north will stay cloudy with a chance of snow in most of the regions.
All right, thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
Let's get into now what's happening on the commute, which I think is very little, right?
Yeah, it's been very, very quiet, which I think we should all enjoy before the potholes start coming out to eat our tires in a few days. Right now, though, sidewalks looking good, roads looking good, highways looking good, bike lanes looking good. But if it's not where you are, give me a call. I'd love to hear from you. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
Well, let's all just take a moment to think about ramen, shall we? When I say ramen, what comes to mind? I'm guessing a distinct broth full of umami flavor, the long noodles that you slurp up, maybe. The poached egg on top. I love when the yolk runs into the soup. Well, the owners of Winnipeg's Izakaya Ramen Shop want the location to be just as memorable as the soup. Their fantasy-based ramen restaurant on McPhillips and Cathedral, it's themed after Japanese comic books and video games. CBC's Jim Agapito visited the shop to talk to the head chef and owner.
My name is Yasuko Akimoto. I'm the owner. I'm actually the head chef. And this is Isekai Ramen. Isekai means like another world or a different world in English.
I know that this restaurant was born out of another very popular ramen joint, Dwarf no Kishette. So tell me a little bit about starting another restaurant again.
Oh yeah, I've been running the Dwarf no Kishette for 10 years. So the landlord was telling us that we have to move out because they try to build a condo. So okay, maybe do something else or go back to Japan. And so many customers gave us a letter, how sad they were, and I actually cried. Some customer were crying at the restaurant. This is don't close, please, relocate. So we went back to Japan and we came back.
Tell me a little bit about this restaurant itself.
I love anime and playing games, so it feels like you're in a different world. I just love isekai, general.
Can you describe what the shop looks like?
The theme is medieval, old Europe, because I don't know why Japanese RPG uses a lot of medieval theme. So this is kind of RPG has always a bar and ask people what to do next. Is this theme looks like that, and I brought so many decorations from Dwarf because it's cute. I the norms.
And you have interesting decor. Tell me about the windows. You've got these beautiful stained glass windows.
Stained glass window. Because of the traffics. I just want to shut off from the real world and the isekai world.
I'm looking here, and what's going on over here?
This is the chashu.
Chashu is what in English?
Oh, chashu, pork belly. The rolled pork belly. We make it here. Yeah, and cook with broth to make it more thicker. Yeah.
And what's going over here? I see something bubbling.
This is so the wok. We cook ramen here.
Oh, you're shaking it off. Yeah. I look at your menu here, and you have red potion, you have green potion, all of these little touches. And when you come up with your menu, how do you do that?
Oh, I don't know. I just want to make people happy. So, for example, Elf Garden Ramen, we make butter using flour mold, and I have butterfly, which is made of paper wafer. It makes the bowl really pretty, right? And I put kale chips. First of all, it's because it's a milk butter ramen. It looks white, broth is white, but after a while it turns to pink.
What's that over there?
This is manga meat, I call. It doesn't exist in this shape, you know what I mean?
You shape the meat onto the bone.
Yeah, so I use chicken bone, but this is grounded meat. Looks the meat in manga.
One thing that I've read, and you can tell me about this, people say that every bowl of ramen is unique. So in your opinion as a chef, what makes a ramen good ramen?
Good ramen is all about broth. We make the broth maybe over 12 hours, high heat. And yeah, Japanese food is all about broth. We should have a base, umami, chicken, and pork and chicken and beef now, and plus vegetarian soup too. So like so many things to do.
And 12 hours you're cooking it for.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know, a lot about ramen is noodles, right?
Okay, so our noodle is a custom made. One of my friends is like ramen noodle crafter. So I asked him to, make this like specific noodle we like. We like tried like 4 or 5 times, and finally we got like best noodle. But our customers asking that if we have a dinner noodle. So now we have like 2 kinds, thick one and thinner one. That actually makes us really, really busier because, now we have to have like thinner ramen for this, thicker ramen for this. Like when we get older, it's kind of like confusing, but I get used to it.
What's the joy you get out of cooking?
Oh, that's a hard question. I work so hard this, past 2-3 weeks because we have to prep and we have to, hire people and train people. Like I don't have time to rest. Like eggs. This is the hardest part. At the end, after closing, we had to peel like 280 eggs, like every day.
Every day?
Yeah, like with my husband.
Just the 2 of you?
Yeah. We're happy, but I don't have time to like relax. Maybe we want to hire more people and train them. So please make me go home and peel egg for me.
That was CBC's Jim Agapito speaking with Isekai Ramen Shop head chef Yasuko Akimoto here in Winnipeg.
Your neighborhood, your community, your country, your world, your news that matters, news that belongs to you. Your world tonight, every night, 7 days a week on CBC Radio 1. On demand on the CBC Listen app and everywhere you get your podcasts.
Friday morning. Look at that shot on YouTube if you're watching the show live this morning. It looks like it's fog, but that, I believe, is just, what the sky's looking like this wintry morning and the sun coming up. Sure noticing the beautiful sunshine right now, and the days that little bit longer is feeling really good. And now we're going to get a bit of warmth to go along with it. So comparative to what we have had, I mean, it's still minus 16, but we'll take it. It's also going to warm up overnight tonight. So it's going to rise overnight to about minus 5. So if you're someone that likes to go out for a walk or hang out, or maybe you're going for a skate in the river trail, it should be just beautiful. And all across Manitoba, we don't have any extreme warnings for the cold in effect. So it seems to have passed us by. And we're looking for highs that once you round out the whole weekend, by Monday, we could be looking at highs around 2 degrees on Sunday, and by Monday, maybe even 3 degrees in Winnipeg. Well, earlier this hour, we were talking about the 35th annual Wonderful Wedding Show. After 8, we're going to hear more about a wedding that was not so wonderful. As you may have heard in the news, destination weddings should be a momentous occasion filled with joy. But for some Winnipeggers, they spent their time in a Mexican resort sick with severe stomach illness, including the bride. We're going to hear from 2 of the wedding guests, wedding goers rather, coming up after 8 o'clock on the show in some more detail. Right now, though, let's turn our attention to something that is happening in our city politically. Winnipeg's Executive Policy Committee voted in favor of federal funding for the North End sewage treatment plant this week. Now, the plant has been in need of upgrades for more than 2 decades. But this funding is very complicated because it comes from the Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund. To qualify for it, though, the city has to make a series of zoning bylaw changes under the Housing Accelerator Fund. And those changes would make it easier to build high-density housing. So what the feds have done is they've said, well, if you want this funding from this pot, you have to agree from the funding that comes with stipulations in the Accelerator Fund. So they've tied it all together. If the city doesn't make the changes, we're at risk of losing the $150 million to make the much-needed upgrades to the North End treatment plant. So the vote did go through, but not everyone at City Hall is fully convinced. Now, first of all, let's hear from Mayor Scott Gillingham. He was on the show this week, and he said, well, this is what he had to say to those councillors that were against this.
I would say get on board. We can't risk the $150 million that has been put on the table by the federal government.
But if they're not on board because they're worried about zoning, do they have a legitimate concern about that? If we just say yes, yes, yes very quickly, we're going to lose some of that ability to have a made in Winnipeg solution. We're going to have increased density in places where maybe neighborhoods or Winnipeggers don't want it.
Yeah, so we're not saying yes, yes, yes quickly. This has been an ongoing and continues to be an ongoing back and forth dialogue with the province, or with the federal government and CMHC. There is a hearing coming up, and a hearing is, a public hearing where the public can have input, and we're trying to find ways that will satisfy, as many councillors as possible, and mitigate some of the concerns that some councillors have, and some of the concerns that I have as well.
So Brian Mays is a city councillor for St. Vital, and he would not like this frame that he was against this, but he did have a lot of concerns about it. I spoke to him yesterday about this after the show.
Good morning.
So how are you feeling about the EPC voting now? It's past that level now in favor of receiving this funding. You were one of the councillors that was worried about density and zoning, right?
Well, actually, yeah. I mean, it's complicated. It's two different housing programs from the federal government sort of now intertwined. That's actually, I requested that, but let's just have one vote on the rezoning. Let's do it in June. So I'm fine with that part. It is important to say it's an application for $150 million that would start paying in 2026 and go till 2030, I think. So this is far from securing funding. This is far from, like, if you vote no, you've forfeited $150 million. I mean, to say that councils are putting it at risk, the federal election is going to put it at risk. I mean, let's be blunt about what the $150 million is. It's an application. So I anticipate supporting this at council because the mayor's right. We should have a public hearing on the rezoning, but it's scheduled for June, and we'll have all of this out at that point.
So obviously, when it comes to the money we're talking about to get the North End sewage treatment plant upgraded, the upgrades have been needed for 22 years. So this is clearly not lost on you.
I don't know if anyone's worked harder on this than I have, except Mayor has certainly gone to bat trying to get federal funding. The other complexity here, I mean, Councillor Orlico and I certainly had questions about Indigenous consultation, federal requirements, environmental assessment, federal requirements. The staff have gotten back to us on that. We are agreeing to freeze development charges for 3 years if we do this. So people can, that means higher taxes for you and me because the developers aren't going to be paying in anything as they develop this new housing. So this does come at a cost, but at least the rezoning debate we can hear from the public starting in March and then have the public hearing in June.
So you initially, if people have been following this complicated story, you actually did a Freedom of Information request. You FIPA'd for more information about the Housing Accelerator Fund. What did you find out that has made you maybe less concerned? Because I understand that you feel a little bit more comfortable. You did get some information.
Yeah, I got 52 pages, found a mistake on page 51, and they then gave me 350 pages. So I got some disclosure. I was pleased with that. Two things, really. The staff are now agreeing we can go ahead with a hearing in June. They said that publicly. So there had been some maneuvering to try and get the hearing moved earlier, but we're going to go ahead have this hearing on the fourplexes, the rezoning, in June. And I mean, I do think the other piece of information that came out is we've already surpassed as a city the target for what they were calling the missing middle section of housing, buildings with 2 to 4 units. We've already exceeded what we wanted to do in the 3-year program. We're 13 months in, we're already 10% over. So if somebody stands up and says, oh my God, we have to do this fourplex stuff to meet our target for buildings with 2 to 4 units, that's just not true. We're only doing it now to get money, and we're not sure we're going to get money because, well, frankly, there's a looming federal election.
So just so people can understand and follow what we're talking about here and what you're saying, if I understand it correctly.
It's complicated.
Yeah,
yes.
but once we get to those public hearings, for people that might be worried, this is at the citizen level, you look around your neighborhood and you might think, maybe density is maybe a concern of yours. And if it is, and then we have these public hearings and the justification is, we need to build more of these 2 to 4 fourplexes. The reality is we already have enough of those on the books to satisfy getting these funding from the feds. So that's not going to be an argument that can go forward because you FIPA'd this information and it shows we've already built all of those units to their standard or their requirement, correct?
Yeah, and I mean, that's now public. The staff are putting that out every month, so we're ahead of the target. So it will, I mean, if we've had a federal election in May or earlier, that will be important information to know in June. But I would encourage people to come out to the information meetings in March, come out to the public hearing in June. I certainly haven't said no fourplexes anywhere. I put out a discussion paper on this. There are certain lots where we should do that, but, we probably shouldn't do it where you have a gravel lane, for example. That's not a great place to quadruple the population. Well, the staff seem to have agreed with that. So the mayor's saying, staff are trying to listen, trying to mitigate. I think, speaking personally, there is some of that going on. But big hearing to come in June, and we'll be going public with a plan in late February or early March, and I certainly want to hear from the public.
Do we know yet, part of what your previous concerns were also around geography, like knowing exactly where these, housing units were going to be built in the city of Winnipeg specifically. Do you have enough specifics now?
I think we're getting close. I could bore you with all sorts of details about, the height limit seems to be coming down that the staff are proposing. The lot width, my discussion paper said, well, you should need 66 feet of lot width if you don't have a back lane. The staff have come pretty close to that. I'm trying to work with them on that. So lots of detail. It wouldn't just be this isn't just about downtown or the older parts of the city. This is citywide stuff, and it's probably the biggest rezoning in the history of the city. So people should get involved. People should give us their opinions. I was on one of these shows and somebody said, well, you're just against any rezoning. All you want is single family. Not at all. Not at all. I'm the one who put out a discussion paper with some ideas. So
you're just trying to slow it down a little bit and not
trying to put it where it'll be, I'm aware this has side effects. I've lived through that in the Glenwood area. So let's try and think it through at the front end and not just, it's easy to shout we got to build up, not out, but the devil is in the details here.
So for Winnipeggers that are going to watch the upcoming vote, when council looks at this, and you said you'll vote yes to the funding coming from the feds, at least for the North End Sewage Treatment Plant, that's because you even though there's some contingency in tying together these two funds, because of the public hearing, it doesn't mean that we've said yes to everything the feds want for zoning requirements for that. There's a way to have both things.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, we're voting to apply for money from the feds, money that wouldn't flow until 2026, money that was promised in the Fed fall economic statement that, of course, didn't get passed due to the prorogue of Parliament. So, yeah, I anticipate voting yes to that part, but then there'll be a long run yet to get to June and the hearing on the fourplexes. And
we'll see what the public says then. All right. Thank you very much, Brian Mays. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I know it's a complicated issue, but speaking personally, it is important to hear from the public on this. I do think it's the biggest rezoning in the city's history. So thanks for having me on.
That's Brian Mays, the city councillor for St. Vital. I spoke with him yesterday after the show. My interview with the mayor, by the way, was earlier this week, and you can hear both of those interviews and go back and see shows and hear them anytime, either on the CBC Listen app or on YouTube, which is where we stream live every day. Maybe you're watching. It's 3 minutes to 8 o'clock. It is -16 in the city of Winnipeg. Let's go to headlines, and I'll tell you a bit more about the forecast today.
Good morning. Well, some Manitobans are filing complaints with Mexico's health authority after getting sick at an all-inclusive resort in Playa del Carmen. Nelson Azevedo was at that resort to officiate his niece's wedding, but 2 days in, what was supposed to be a joyous occasion took a turn for the worst. 31 out of 33 people in the wedding, including the bride, became severely ill. So we'll hear more about that story coming up in the next half hour. As well, something to cheer about, a championship win at the NHL's mid-season tournament. The Four Nations face-off, the very first Four Nations face-off. Team Canada defeating the USA 3-2 in overtime. The winning goal from Connor McDavid. And after they won, this is what it sounded like in Team Canada's locker room. sure a lot of people were singing that song last night as well. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 8:30.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
It is time to give you that detail I mentioned on the forecast. So it's going to get warmer overnight. Our today high in Winnipeg is -9. With wind chill, though, it could feel like -29 at points this morning. But this afternoon, it will feel more like -17. Tonight, our temperature is going to rise to -5. And then looking through the weekend, it's just like it was twice previously this winter, where we had really deep freeze conditions, and then all of a sudden it swung to above 0. So we are expecting that Saturday we're going to see a high of -1, and then into Sunday we're looking at 2 periods of snow or rain, and then on Monday mix of sun and cloud and a high of 3. So it's going to get messy. Don't wash the car. Saving you that. Save your cash. It's just going to get dirty. In Brandon right now -19, and up in Thompson it's -16 degrees. So I am Marcy Marcusa with our team here at the show, and coming up we'll hear more about what happened to that family and family members who went to Mexico hoping to celebrate a wedding and ended up having a bigger problem on their hands. Stay tuned.
On cue.
I'm Talia Schlanger, sitting in for Tom Power. Canadian singer-songwriter Tate McRae is having a huge moment. She's got a brand new album and a bunch of Juno nominations. She'll tell you about this whirlwind rise to fame, and with all of that, how she's learning to stay present.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current.
I'm Peter Armstrong. At the 3-year mark of the Ukraine war, there's some hope for peace, but great fear from that country that it will come at a very high cost. How Ukrainians are vowing to preserve their identity and not repeat history. Coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Martina Fitzgerald from Vancouver. And all the way across the country to Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia. Cheers ring out as Canadians celebrate Canada's 3-2 victory over the United States last night in the championship game of the Four Nations Cup. It came during a low point in the relationship between our two countries. The CBC's Jamie Strachan has more from Boston.
In the end, the finals of the Four Nations Cup delivered, and who else to end it but Connor McDavid. The Edmonton Oilers superstar ripped a shot into the top corner just over 8 minutes into overtime, the Canadian bench erupting in jubilation. The championship game was played at a feverish pace, the first time the league's best players have faced each other in more than a decade, adding fuel the political tension that loomed over the final, driven by U.S. President Donald Trump, who continued his jibes about Canada becoming the 51st state in the hours leading up to puck drop. The tension carried into the heavily partisan American crowd, who showered the Canadian anthem with boos. U.S. fans sang the Star-Spangled Banner in unison at a deafening level. But Canada had the last laugh, quieting the American crowd and capturing the title at a tournament that far exceeded expectations. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Boston.
That booing that Jamie mentioned only tells part of the story regarding national anthems. There was an alteration to O Canada by Chantal Kreviazuk.
True patriot love that only us command.
Did you hear that? Kreviazuk made a slight adjustment to the lyrics, singing that only us demand. Despite continued jabs by U.S. President Donald Trump before the match, Prime Minister Trudeau had the last word, at least so far, posting on social media, "You can't take our country, and you can't take our game." The premiers of Nova Scotia and Ontario are in the U.S. Capitol this morning. They're meeting with governors from several states attending a conference in Washington. The CBC's Cameron McIntosh is on this story for us, and he joins us from Washington with more. Cam, what are the premiers trying to do?
Well, quite simply, it's just about being seen and heard. Ontario Premier Doug Ford, Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston are both here. Now, relations with Canada aren't formally on the agenda for the governors, but the premiers are just trying to take advantage of an opportunity with nearly all the governors and hundreds of state officials all in one place. The trying to talk to whoever they can, Republican, Democrat, just building the case for partnership with Canada in the face of President Trump's tariff threats. Here now is Premier Tim Houston.
No tariffs. I mean, ultimately, that's what we're trying to get to. But it's a process. We understand that. So we just continue to talk about how the impact it can be. Put the price up for Americans, have an impact on Canadians, have an impact on Nova Scotians. So the success is just getting people to listen and engage in dialogue.
Now, I should mention he's been walking around in a red Team Canada jersey, so that certainly will be a conversation starter in D.C. today. This also builds on similar lobbying last week when all 13 premiers are here. They got a meeting with some Trump officials, both sides saying the dialogue was positive, but certainly no promises made.
So no promises, but what are the governors saying about all this?
Well, plenty of them really do share Canada's concerns. Not only does Canada do billions of dollars in trade with the U.S. each day, Canada is the top export market for 36 states. So they're concerned about retaliation, though the Republican governors are towing the Trump line. Now, while Houston and Ford say conversations are positive, they also say it's just not front of mind like it is in Canada. Other issues like border security, fentanyl are big on the agenda here, and President Trump is speaking to the governors later today. The big challenge for these two premiers is just getting on the radar as that March 4th tariff deadline looms.
And that is the CBC's Cam McIntosh in Washington. Thanks so much, Cam.
My pleasure.
Israel's prime minister says Hamas's cruelty knows no bounds. Benjamin Netanyahu, speaking after a body returned to Israel, was determined to not be that of a hostage taken by Hamas. The body of Shari Bibas was supposed to be returned along with those of her 2 children yesterday. But Israeli investigators say the body was that of an unidentified woman from Gaza. Lieutenant Colonel Nadav Shoshani is an Israeli defense spokesperson. He says the finding came after a long forensic process.
We have DNA of all the hostages, and we've checked time and time again, and we came to the result that it's not Shiri, that it's not any of our hostages. And it is apparent it is just an anonymous person from Gaza.
Hamas says the remains appear to have been mixed with others in the rubble from an Israeli airstrike. The militant group has released the names of the 6 hostages, all alive, to be released tomorrow. Justin Trudeau is reassuring Kyiv of Canada's continued support. The Prime Minister spoke with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky last night. The phone conversation comes in the midst of worsening relations between Zelensky and U.S. President Donald Trump. Anna Cunningham has more from London.
Drones and missiles in the sky above Ukraine overnight. Russian attacks continue as President Donald Trump's special envoy to Ukraine, retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, was in Kyiv. He met with President Volodymyr Zelensky Thursday. In front of the cameras, a welcoming handshake. But then their joint news conference was swiftly cancelled. It's understood that request came from Washington. Trump's words in recent days seem to indicate the relationship with Ukraine is breaking down. Zelensky has refused to sign a deal giving the US access to half of Ukraine's natural minerals, including lithium and titanium. He says the draft paperwork lacks security guarantees. This has been a week that has shocked Europe. It started with the US sitting down to talk to a Russian delegation. Then accusations from the US president that the Ukrainian leader is a dictator. But in Washington,
some of the rhetoric coming out of Kyiv, frankly, and insults to President Trump were unacceptable.
White House National Security Advisor Mike Waltz.
He needs to come back to the table.
President Zelensky says talks with Keith Kellogg restored hope. He says strong agreements with America are needed, agreements that will really work. French President Emmanuel Macron is preparing to visit President Trump Monday. He says he will try to convince him that his interests were in line with the European allies. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
A British Columbia man is putting tariff tensions aside and reaching across the border. He's inviting Americans to visit his hometown, Nanaimo. The message, shared on TikTok, has taken off among Americans as a way to protest President Trump's treatment of Canada. Georgie Smythe has more.
Hey, Americans who support Canadians, I have an idea. What if we picked a day in like a month and a half or so where all of you come up here to Vancouver Island?
Todd Maffin is throwing down the welcome mat for thousands of Americans.
Should we do this?
To support Canada by signing up to visit his town, Nimo, in the spring. The invite and the video went viral down south, provoking shares like this.
He says, hey, $1 worth of $1.46 up here, right?
Maffin, who's a business journalist, says the idea was kind of an accident, but could have a huge positive impact on the seaside town.
We're past 2,000 people now. If 10% of those 2,000 show up, 200 people, is still going to be, I think, a pretty decent boost to the Mid-Island's economy.
The local tourism board has already got hotel bookings from people as far as Texas and Florida. Maffin included videos and maps explaining how to get to Nanaimo.
You're going to be coming mostly through the Peace Arch border crossing, and you're going to be driving north into Canada.
Nanaimo Mayor Leonard Krogh says after some initial confusion, the town is ready to host.
The prospect of taking money from American tourists during this particularly challenging time in our relationship with the United States is very appealing to me.
Canadians and Americans trading travel tips again instead of tariffs for now. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Vancouver.
And that is the latest national, international, and hockey news from World Report. I'm Martina Fitzgerald. This is CBC News.
Well, we're going to keep talking hockey this half hour on Information Radio. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to The Morning Show on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, the app, and YouTube. A nice mild Friday compared to what we've had, that is. Well, imagine this. 5 guys crammed into an SUV driving almost 30 hours to get to that hockey game to watch their buddy Seth. Seth Jarvis, who was born here in Winnipeg. We're going to talk to one of those friends, Brian Hanna, who was at the game last night. They're making their way back to the city. What did it feel like in there? You know, I was watching it on television. What was the moment if you were in there? What could you hear? So we're going to hear more from Brian. We just reached him at 8 o'clock. So we're going to have that coming up for you this half hour on the show. Also, just shout out to Mark Stone, of course, from Winnipeg, also on the Team Canada for this. In addition, this half hour on the program, we're going to get more details about a wedding that was ruined. Destination weddings should be momentous occasions filled with joy. But for some Winnipeggers, they spent their time in a Mexican resort sick with severe stomach illness. We're going to hear from 2 of the wedding goers in this half hour. Right now, let's get to other stories that are making news today in our community and in Manitoba. Heather Wells is here with developments.
Good morning. Well, an outreach organization in Winnipeg is calling for more safe spaces for young people after a string of violent incidents in the North End. In the last week, in that area, 2 people died in a double homicide. Another person was shot in a separate incident. We're going to hear from Community Helpers Unite coming up. As well, the Women's Health Clinic has suspended in-person appointments at the Graham Avenue Clinic because of flooding. It's just the latest incident to plague that 60-year-old community clinic. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 8:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
All right, let's get to what's happening in this forecast. Abby Adiemi,
look up. The sun, it's making its appearance already over the city. Minus 16 outside, a bright start for the city. Cloudy breaks would happen sometime after during your lunch break. It's going to feel a bit cold this morning with the wind chill factored in. However, we will warm up to a high of minus 9. And then tonight we'll see partly cloudy conditions and temperatures will climb to minus 5 by tomorrow morning. In other regions from the Westman, Parkland, Interlake region, we're going to see some sunshine this morning. Some clouds will roll in later, while up north it's a bit cloudy and a bit of light snow in the forecast. But right now, Winnipeg, we are at minus 16 and the sun, it's making its appearance.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
It's kind of nice, hey, Corey, that the weather's breaking on a Friday.
Yes, I know. It feels
the
Friday vibes. It's reflecting. I think it's called pathetic fallacy. It's called in
Wow.
literature, where the weather reflects the vibes.
Don't
Yeah.
ask me. I was going to ask you what it felt like on the river trail. Though.
Yeah, watch. I'm going to get a call from an English teacher being like, you got it all wrong. Yes, the river trail, I was on it yesterday. It was beautiful. We're actually going to go back today for a skate with our little guy, so it should be fun. But otherwise, I've only heard maybe a bit of blowing snow actually on Highway 15. I got a call from Fred between Enola and Winnipeg. So not ideal, but still very drivable. Not too bad. If you have any updates for me, though, what you've seen out there, if you're walking, biking, driving, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
Well, what a game it was. Canada won the Four Nations face-off in overtime last night against the U.S. 3-2. And people were just nervous the whole way through. I was watching people share on Facebook their thoughts. Now, a group of friends from our city, from Winnipeg, were in Boston last night to watch this in person. They went down, as I alluded to cheer for their friend Seth Jarvis, who was playing right wing for Team Canada. Seth Jarvis was born here in Winnipeg, went to school here. They even made it onto national television during the broadcast. So here's a little bit of their interview between periods with Sportsnet last night.
Back in Boston with the road trippers from Winnipeg, Seth Jarvis's buddies, Lucas, Brian, and Sloan. So, Lucas, take us through the last few days. What happened?
Yeah, I mean, it's just been a roller coaster. We were supposed to fly out on Sunday. That got canceled, rescheduled a couple times. 2 days ago, we decided, hey, we're driving out. We're going to get to this game no matter what. We got to support our country, and more importantly, we got to support one of our best buddies. So we drove out here, and it's worth every minute of it.
Beautiful. You're in a hostile environment up here, but you guys are doing an excellent job. Congrats on making it out here. Just terrific. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Chris.
You know, Seth's known to be quite a character, and he's got to come quite honestly, hanging out with those guys.
That's incredible. That's a great story. It's so Canadian.
So loud in there. I don't know if you made it out. They were just talking about how Canadian that was, that moment with those Winnipeg guys last night. The group of Winnipeggers road trip to Boston to cheer on their friend Seth Jarvis in the big game. Now, Brian Hanna was one of those 5 guys, and we just reached him at 8. Brian Hanna?
Hey, how's it going?
How's it going for you? I heard you're furiously packing after what must have been an amazing night. What was it like down there last night? What did it feel like?
It was electric. It was so cool. It was so much fun, you know, having it end that way. It made the whole trip worth it. So, yeah, I don't even know what to say. It was a once in a lifetime opportunity getting to see all the Canadian fans down here, roaming the streets and stuff. It was awesome.
What was the biggest moment for you down there, you know, as a Winnipegger, as a Canadian? I mean, watching the TV, I couldn't tell if it was the goal or if it was the singing of the anthem. What for you was sort of the moment?
You know, I don't even know. The anthems were pretty cool. But obviously the overtime goal, like that's like the new golden goal, honestly. So it was pretty cool to be part of history and just to be able to say I was there and, you know, one day tell my kids that I was there. So that was the coolest part for sure.
Could you make out the change to the lyrics in the Canadian anthem when Chantal Karviasik was singing? It was so loud in there. I wondered if you actually understood what was happening in that moment.
Honestly, that's the first I heard of that. I couldn't hear a thing during that. Everything was so loud, like behind all the noise. I couldn't even tell what the anthem singers were saying. So that's the first I've heard of any lyric changes.
Did you get a chance at all to celebrate with any of the players? Obviously, you were there supporting Seth Jarvis.
Yeah.
Did you get to talk with him?
Yeah, after the game, we briefly got to see him and a few of the guys after. So it was super cool to meet, like, you know, your childhood heroes and especially our buddy too. Just so proud of him to have that moment and to let us be a part of it. So that was really cool and awesome for him to share that with us a little bit.
Who else did you meet?
Well, you know, we got to meet most of the guys. They had like a little friends and family thing after, so we got to share the moment with some of those guys. It was super cool.
Like McDavid, Crosby, like everybody in the room, kind of.
Yeah, all those guys. Honestly, all of them were there.
How did you handle that? Like, because did you try to keep it cool, or did you,
Oh yeah.
Did you lean in for some selfies?
Like you like when you're in the family with all the family, you try to avoid asking for pictures, but you know it was tempting at times, just trying to play a cool act like we belonged there. So, But yeah, it was pretty awesome.
You guys kind of did us proud too, You made Winnipeg look styling because y'all like had really cool glasses on and the mustache nods. What was it like with your sort of, between period interview? You were on Sportsnet last night.
It kind of caught us off guard, but the comments have been kind of funny to look at. So I'm glad we're doing Winnipeg proud, and hopefully the positive comments keep on coming.
What do you mean the comments have been funny? Can you give me an example of what you mean?
There was one that was telling my buddy he needs a haircut, or a few saying, these Winnipeg boys look awesome, would love to grab a drink with Winnipeg boys anytime. Like stuff like that. Just kind of funny to hear.
Obviously politics played into last night. Was there tension there too? Could you feel any of that?
At points, but I feel like people were there to watch a hockey game, so it wasn't really about politics or anything for them. It was just about watching some good hockey and being a part of history. So all that was kind of pushed to the side, and if anything did get brought up, it was never taken too far.
Have you guys followed Seth? I don't know how deep your friendship is with Seth, where you first met him, or if you're following him to other big moments in his hockey career.
Well, I know, wherever he goes, I hope to keep being his friend. So, if there's other big moments along there and he wants us there to support him, we'll definitely be there and do whatever we can to get there. So, just been cool to be on this journey with him,
How far back do you go with him, Brian?
Well, a bunch of us, all of us played our youth hockey with him. So, elementary school ages, known him since we were around 10. A few guys here more than others, known him since we were a lot younger. So it kind of just all ranges, but definitely all since the elementary school, younger ages.
What was the elementary school here in Winnipeg?
Yeah, I went to Montrose, but then he went to Starbuck with one of our other buddies, Lucas, out there, and he went to Tuxedo with, knew our buddy Sloan, so it just ranges.
Lots of little pockets then all over the place of people that would have been cheering and who would have known Seth and maybe played with him too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so you're furiously packing because you guys actually literally hit the road. And how many of you were there, and how many hours did you drive to get there to be there last night?
There's actually 5 of us shoved in a little SUV. And we drove, it was like a 29-hour trip to get here, all in total, driving through the night. So the way here was definitely going to be easier than the way home. So we gotta get on the road as soon as we can here.
All right. Well, I'll let you do that, Brian. Thank you so much for telling us about your amazing night. I can't imagine that after party and the photos that you've got. If you've got one you can share with us, send it our way. And thank you so much for talking to CBC.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
How much fun. Brian Hanna was in Boston last night to support his friend Seth Jarvis as he played for Team Canada. We spoke with Brian at 8 o'clock. They're now leaving to come home. Also from Winnipeg on Team Canada, of course, Mark Stone. Well, we alluded to the fact that Chantal Kreviazuk, also Winnipeg-born, changed the lyrics to "O Canada" last night. We got a listener line about it. First, let's hear from Chantal and how she sung this.
Hey, hi, it's Amanda LaRouche-Tell. I'm just calling in to say thank you to Chantal Kreviazuk for changing the lyrics of the national anthem. While I didn't hear it, I've certainly been hearing about it live or this morning on the news, and I just want to thank her. Words matter. Words are important. The national anthem is important, and changing those lyrics that, after all, used to be in All Thy Sons command, and now they've recently been updated in All of Us command. Why not change the lyrics as Chantal did to drive home a point? I think that's what language is about. That's what words are for, and so I just want to thank her.
So last night she did sing instead of "In All of Us" command, she sang, quote, "That Only Us" command. In fact, CBC News has now understood she wrote it on her hand to make sure that she would perform it as planned. And what a moment that would have felt like for her, standing among booing during the anthem, all the noise there. We did try to get Chantal Kreviazuk on the program this morning. She was just unable to join us. I'm sure we'll hear from her later today. It's not the first time the anthem's been changed, of course. Remember Julie Black changing the anthem in a moment, Our Home on Native Land. 8:22 a.m. the time now. I'm RC Marcusa, and next on the show, let's hear more about something that was in the news this morning. Winnipeggers that are relieved to be home, after a trip to Mexico went awry. Nelson Azevedo was there to officiate a wedding at the Sandos Playa Car Resort in Playa del Carmen. The bride, his niece, fell ill alongside 31 of 33 guests. Got so bad the wedding was postponed. They're calling on the resort to be inspected. Azevedo paints a very clear picture of what he witnessed while there.
So we're walking on the hallways and where the suites were and stuff, all we can hear is, not in every single one, but people puking. The one right beside me, they were puking on like too. There was carpets of puke on the sidewalks and stuff and people throwing up. I saw young ladies sitting at the curb, they couldn't make it to the bathroom, just puking in bags and stuff. It was just a mess. And we told the manager, okay, if you're saying that I'm lying, take a walk. Actually, it was my nephew that was talking to this one particular manager. And he said, if you think I'm lying to you, let's take a walk. Let's take a walk and see what's happening out here. Oh no, this is a very sanitary place. We pass all inspections, blah, blah, blah. And they didn't want to even get engaged in anything.
Nelson Azevedo speaking with CBC's Felicia Adam about this. Now, photographer Joel Boyley was hired to capture shots of the wedding. He decided to make a family vacation of it. His wife, kids, and parents were there. Those plans took a tailspin. He and his family got violently ill on their second day at the resort. Felicia also spoke with him after he returned from Mexico on Wednesday.
Began with like a kind of a ball of fire right in the stomach, and just erupted into violent illness lasting anywhere up to 36 hours. Was completely consistent with everyone. And, you know, I didn't think too much of it when we arrived, but I was hit with it within 5 minutes of being at that resort, that there was just this raw sewage smell in the air. And that raw sewage smell seemed to permeate the food, everything, you know, all the food there looked amazing, but every bite was just wrong. Something was off. But, you know, maybe it's our fault for not questioning things more ahead of time. You know, I was the wedding photographer for this wedding. For the most part, I'm not somebody who wants to make noise, you know, but after a day or 2 days of just hearing everybody complain about everything and you know, not really feeling they had anywhere to turn or anything that they could do about it. And then when my kids got hit with it, and by the second and third day of them being really ill, I mean, more sick than I've ever seen them, just lifeless, no personality, could barely speak. You know, it just kind of really hit me in a way that I wasn't about to let it go. You know, people have asked, like, why are you making such a stink about this? Or, you know, it's just a Mexican resort, so you got sick, who cares? Well, you know, I can remember the moment. It was 3:24 a.m., February 17th. You know, both of my kids are screaming, crying in pain, and their stomachs hurt. And I just told them that I'm going to fix it, and I'm going to make whoever did this to them say sorry. And, you know, I'm just somebody who, keeping a promise to my kids is very important to me. So that's what I'm doing.
And tell me about the response from the hotel when you said, you know, there's a problem here. What did they say?
So it was pretty clear that the staff, whatever management supervisors were around or accessible, had a bit of a playbook to follow. A lot of their eyes were just to the floor and just kept repeating the same statement. You must have been sick before you got here. Nobody else is sick. Like, it's just, you'll be fine. Our water's fine, our food's fine, everything's fine. We asked for bottles of water. They pointed us to the little convenience store where we could purchase a small bottle of water for $12 US. There was no other food options that, you know, weren't basically the buffet or the same kind of kitchen. So we spent the last 4 days ordering on delivery apps from restaurants in town, which, you know, is kind of pathetic for an all-inclusive resort. You know, they definitely saved some money on us because nobody was eating or drinking anything.
How frustrating is that? You know, you're telling somebody, hey, there's a problem, and they're like, no, there isn't.
It's frustrating because, you know, again, if it was just myself, I'd probably let it go. It's more the helpless people in this, my kids. It's the people, like, you know, as a wedding photographer, I hold my couple's happiness in high regard, and to see somebody go down there with all their family and friends expecting a dream and receiving the absolute opposite just really irked me. So, you know, as I assume as a business owner, people who are working at that resort, probably want to see that resort do well. And you would think if in the hospitality industry, if people are coming to you consistently and in staggering numbers saying that there's an issue here, they would want to help in any way. If they would have done so much as offer to get us water or bring us food that they could assure was properly cooked and not, like we've had reports of people getting served raw chicken, things like this. If they would have made even the smallest effort to acknowledge that, yes, you're not having the time that we hoped you would have, and here's some solutions, I probably would have dropped it. But they did nothing. They basically instructed us to feel free to go leave a Google review if we felt the need. And as you look at the Google reviews, you can do so. You can see this issue in real time. There will be a terrible review saying everything I'm saying right now, followed by 3, 4, 5 perfectly suspiciously glowing 5-star ratings, all with kind of the same language. It's clear to me that they have a review farm in place where there are people burying negative reviews. So they're not afraid of people leaving bad reviews. We have it in writing from the wedding coordinator saying, go ahead and leave a bad review. We have plenty of more reviews, good ones basically. So they're not afraid of that.
Wedding photographer Joe Boyley, he got back from the trip on Wednesday. As he said, he suspects about 30 wedding guests were sick. Now, when asked about wedding groups falling ill, Sandos Playakar said, quote, "We heard that both the United States and Canada are currently experiencing a significant increase in cases of gastrointestinal illness, primarily related to norovirus, but also seasonal flu. Maybe there's some correlation, with a question mark," end quote. CBC News has reached out to local government authorities in Mexico as well as Global Affairs Canada for comment, but has yet to receive a response. We're coming up to news time at 8:30 here. And just to mention, we've had a pretty good morning so far on the morning commute. You do need to reach us, so I know we're late in the morning drive here, but if there is a problem out there, you can still reach us and we will pass it along. It's 204-788-3093. Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it is sunny. It's minus 17 right now. We are actually inching closer to seasonal as we warm up to minus 9 today. The normal high this time of year is minus 6. A string of violence in Winnipeg's North End has an organization pushing for more youth programming. Brandy Bobier runs Community Helpers Unite. She says drug addiction and poverty are behind a spike of crime in the North End, and she wants to see more safe spaces for young people where they can feel like they're being supported and heard.
That's why they're reaching out to gangs more, is because they get that sense of community, that sense of family. And it ties hand in hand with drugs and weapons.
Over the last week, 2 people have died and 1 person was injured in 2 separate shootings. Manitoba's health minister says it is unacceptable the Women's Health Clinic is closed again because of a decrepit building. The Graham Avenue facility flooded because heat pipes burst after they froze when the boiler quit. It's the second time in 7 months in-person appointments have been suspended because of building problems. Uzoma Asaguera, the health minister, says the department provided heaters and generators to reduce the impact on patients.
Fix the damage, to repair damage, and to make sure services can continue, recognizing that we all need to work together to ensure that we're moving in a direction where we have the right infrastructure.
Asaguera says it will be up to the community clinic to make sure the building is safe. The minister says the clinic's goal to retrofit the Graham Avenue building is massive and would need federal funding. An education leader is concerned about reemergence of the debate over what students learn in schools. Progressive Conservative leadership candidate Wally Dowdrich says school libraries are carrying pornographic books. He made the allegation at this week's PC leadership debate in Brandon. Manitoba School Boards Association President Sandy Nemeth calls Dowdrich's claim misinformation.
A great deal of misunderstanding about not only the content, but what is actually in the school libraries. And Mr. Doddridge does everybody a great disservice by spouting off the way he has.
After the debate, an audience member showed CBC a book depicting sexual activities, but Nemeth says there is no book like that in schools. Gambler First Nation near Russell has been hunting for a doctor for 6 years, and now they are opening a clinic in early March with a Brazilian doctor, Igor Chincaru. For the first year, he will be a clinical assistant as he finalizes becoming a practicing physician in Canada. Gambler Chief David Ledoux says the provincial West Central Manitoba Immigration Initiative helped them find Chincaru. He says together they're making sure on-reserve members have better health care.
It felt good. We had a lot of people helping us, I guess, getting across the finish line, so it was really pleasant to get this doctor in our community.
Ledoux says there is a chance the clinic will be open to surrounding communities in the future, but for now, his patient list will consist of the 89 on-reserve members. Well, Canada has won the inaugural Four Nations Face-Off tournament, beating the United States in thrilling fashion.
Carr sends it around. Marner waiting. Connor McDavid scores! Connor McDavid for Canada!
Connor McDavid with the overtime winner on Sportsnet as Canada beat the U.S. 3-2 in overtime in Boston. Goalie Jordan Binnington, also from Richmond Hill, turned aside 31 shots for that win. Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia native Nathan McKinnon was named the tournament's most valuable player. And coming up tomorrow night, the Winnipeg Jets are back in action in a game pitting the two goalies against each other once again. Connor Hellebuck this time in a Jets jersey and Jordan Binnington in net for St. Louis. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells, Aaron Broman, Megan Ketcherson, our news team. Thank you so much for the morning. Thanks to our live team, Corey Funk, Abby Adiemi, and Mr. Kevin Nipatebo. In addition, it's Friday, so just want to give a thanks to the associate producers who work in our unit on all of the programs here at CBC Manitoba, our local shows. They are, in addition to those I've already mentioned, Kalkadan Mulugeta, Sierra Sanders, Chidi Akuma, May McKillop, Marshall Hodgins, Dylan Longhurst, Issa Kickson, Chloe Friesen, and Bruce Layden. Our community reporter in unit is Shanley Vidal. Jim Agapito is also a reporter in unit. Hosts in unit, Nadia Kidwai, Faith Fundel, and Margot Watt filling in. Producers Wendy Parker and Donna Carrero filling in, as well as YouTube producers Travis Peterson, in addition to Kev, who I already mentioned. And the show's producer of Current Affairs unit overall is Nellie Gonzalez, and Leif Larson is the senior producer of audio here at CBC Manitoba. Thank you, everybody, for the week. And also special thanks to Brian Harder, who was on helping us out just in case things went crazy when we were on location at Peerless Garments yesterday. So he was on standby for us. That is us as me and Corey Funk. What do you have to say before we wrap here?
Fairly straightforward commute today. No major issue. Some blowing snow on Highway 15, I heard, between Enola and Winnipeg. Other than that, just a lovely day. Hopefully you can get out and enjoy the finally some warm weather, warmish weather.
I know. And poor Abby, like for weeks he's been like the bearer of bad news. So you get the happy last word this week.
Yeah, I get to bring the happy last word. We're already seeing sunshine in most of the regions, while the north will still see some cloudy conditions. Looking at the regional highs, Winnipeg would get to -9, the Pembina Valley would get to -5, Brandon would see -4, Dauphin -3, Gimli would be around -9, and then Thompson and Churchill will see highs between -10 and -15. But right now, Winnipeg, it is -16. It is sunny outside, and it's going to warm up this weekend.
Enjoy it, Abby. Thank you.
Thank you.
I am off on Monday. Margot Watt will be here hosting, and thank you for listening. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Take care, be well, Manitoba. Thanks for tuning in each and every morning. If you have any feedback on the show, love to hear it. 788-3205. And don't forget about our podcast. It's called This is Manitoba. Take care. The Current's next.